Good evening. It's 7 p.m., so we'll get the meeting started. Chair Narita is running 10 minutes late, but we'll get started, and as soon as she comes in, she'll take over. So welcome to the regular meeting of the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission this Wednesday evening, August 13th. I now call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Michael,
Here.
Commissioner Crayons,
Here.
Commissioner Renaud,
Here.
Youth Commissioner Scott.
I heard you.
Youth Commissioner Singh, and Chair Narita will be here.
At this time, I will ask the clerk if any notifications or requests for virtual meeting participation have been received from any members of the commission due to just cause or emergency circumstances.
We do not have any requests this time.
Okay. So welcome. We are excited to be here in person with options for those who choose not to be in person to still participate virtually. For those attending in person, complete a yellow request to speak slip and hand it to the clerk. If participating remotely, use the raise your hand feature in Zoom and you'll be called on at the appropriate time. If called in via phone, press *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for that specific item. Clerk, please read the consent calendar.
On consent, we have the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission regular meeting minutes approval for the July 9th meeting.
Is there any member of the commission who would like to pull an item from the consent calendar? No? Great. If any of the members of the public who wish to comment on any consent calendar item, now would be the time to make your comment. This is for consent calendar items only.
If anyone would like to comment on consent calendar only, please fill out a slip.
Great.
Madam Chair, I do not have anyone on virtual either.
Great. Is there a motion from commission to approve the consent calendar?
Make a motion to approve the consent calendar as written.
Thank you.
Second.
Perfect.
Vice Chair Michael,
Yes.
Commissioner Renaud,
Yes.
and Commissioner Crayons.
Yes.
All right, carries 3-0.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is public comment. Members of the public wishing to comment on any item not appearing on the agenda may address the commission at this time. State law prevents the commission from taking action on any matter not on the agenda. Your comments may be referred to staff for follow-up. This public comment section is generally limited to a total of 15 minutes. However, that is subject to commission's discretion and can be extended if commission wishes to do so. And one more note, we welcome speakers providing public comment, but please be advised this is a limited public forum. As such, speakers must stay on topic if speaking to a particular agenda item, and if speaking during general public comment, they must address matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. If speakers fail to follow these rules, they will be warned, and if they continue to disregard our rules, their opportunity to speak will be ended. Clerk, do we have any public comments?
I have not received any in person, but I will be waiting for some folks back there. I do have one person who had their hand raised, but they did just lower it. So I will give everyone 2 minutes to fill it out.
Sounds good. And emphasizing that this is for items not on the agenda. So are you waving us?
All right. It does look like we do not have any comments for public
Okay.
comment this time.
Great. Thank you. So it looks like we're moving on to new business, which is the 19th Avenue Fashion Island Boulevard Multimodal Improvement Project informational presentation to be given by Bethany Lopez, Senior Engineer, will give an informational update about the project and provide feedback or recommendations. Thank you, Bethany.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Bethany Lopez. I'm a senior engineer. I oversee the traffic engineering division for the Public Works Department. Also on the call is some of the additional project team from the San Mateo County Transportation Authority, Carolyn Mamaradlo and Jessica Manzi, both with the TA, and who are partnering on this project with us. Tonight, we're going to go through some of this project's goals, go over the background of the project, including some of the history and how we got here, go through some of the design challenges and the concept designs as well, go over the outreach that's been conducted to date, and talk through some of the funding and the schedule for the project. So we'll be discussing this at the end, but these are here for you to sort of look out for during the discussion of the presentation. So we're going to be looking for feedback on the proposed design elements, including the intersection at Delaware, the SR 92 ramps, and 19th Avenue intersection. This is one intersection. And we're going to be talking about the safety improvements and the gas station access at that location and talking through some of the details of that. We'll also be working through getting feedback on some of the proposed lane swaps on the Seal Slough Bridge. And what we're calling the VHD balancing is vehicle hours of delay balancing. And we'll talk through what that terminology means in the presentation. And then lastly, we'll be going through the funding strategy for this project. So first, to talk about the project's goals, the goal of the project is to improve congestion relief, improve traffic flows, as a lot of folks are aware that there's a lot of challenges on the corridor. We're also looking to improve access for pedestrians and bicyclists, as well as transit access and travel times. We think that that one and the first one go hand in hand, and also try to limit parking loss to the extent possible. For some of the project background, this project started around 2023. It was branded as the 10192 Mobility Hub and Smart Corridor Plan. This included a Caltrans lot that's at the intersection of 19th Avenue and Fashion Island Boulevard, and as well as this corridor. In that, we also included 3 pop-up events. We had a community meeting that collected feedback on these proposed design concepts. They were concepts at that time and more high level. And so where we're at now is getting into the actual construction designs, getting into more detail. Again, during that time, there was an existing conditions assessment, and we had an opportunity to get feedback from the community on how to narrow this scope and how to build what scope we're looking at right now. I wanted to talk through really briefly some of the 2040 general plan policies and actions. This is a lot of text. We're not going to go through it all, but I do want to note that there are a lot of policies and actions in the general plan that support the type of project that we're proposing here. So the first one about sustainable transportation, this is the very first goal in the circulation element, which is to reduce vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gases by increasing mode share options for sustainable travel modes such as walking, biking, and public transit. There's also an additional policy to apply complete street standards. So this is a similar vein where you're looking to apply an ability to increase modes when we're doing any sort of projects. Vision Zero is a policy in which we're looking to improve safety and eliminate fatal and severe injury collisions. As far as prioritizing bike and pedestrian needs, again, we're looking to prioritize that in these kinds of projects to be able to increase connectivity and safety. And then not just about bike and ped projects, but we are looking to also maintain a transportation network here in policy C 6.2 that will accommodate future growth, reduce VMT, and equitably implement complete streets. So this is really pertaining to all modes, not just bikes, peds. And then lastly, pertaining to transit, provide projects that will increase access to transit. We're also looking at how this project aligns with City Council priorities. In the 25-26 City Council priorities, we see alignment with this project with priority number 28, 39, and 40. 28 and 40 are largely related to the bike and ped implementation component of this project, and then 39 is related to the congestion relief component of the project. Diving into some of the corridor safety data. So we took a look at data from 2019 to 2024. In that, we've identified that there have been 200 collisions along this corridor. That spans all the way from Pacific, and I'll show you a map of That spans from Pacific all the way to Mariners Island. And 50 of those collisions, as we'll talk about in just a minute, were at the Fashion Island and Norfolk intersection. 74 of them were at the 19th Avenue and Delaware intersection. In this corridor, there were 3 pedestrian collisions, 3 bike collisions during this timeline. I do also want to note that there was a relatively recent pedestrian fatality on this corridor as well. It's not included in this data set, but it is one that we wanted to make note of. Also on the corridor, countywide bike high injury network hotspots, both intersections of Delaware and 19th and Fashion Island and Norfolk were identified. Those are the 2 that I just mentioned, having the highest amount of collisions on the corridor. And then in our own local roadway safety plan, Fashion Island and Norfolk is identified as the number 5 top priority intersection for us to address safety concerns. Looking again at some additional data sources, the CCAG Safe Routes to School speed analysis has identified that this corridor has reported speedings of 6 to 10 miles per hour over the posted speed limit, which poses, obviously concerns for safety of other users along the roadway, as well as this being a corridor that's identified on the youth-based high injury network in a similar document. Jumping really broadly to the roadway network context of this corridor in the relation to the entire city. So the gray outline is it is the boundary of the city. We're a little bit zoomed in from here. The yellow lines represent roadways that cross US 101. And really what I'm trying to identify here is the barrier that 101 has created in the community. And this is probably well understood. We have 4 crossings that provide access to all modes. So vehicles, bikes, pedestrians are able to cross 101 at these yellow points. We also have 1 green crossing, which is a bike ped bridge just north of the 3rd Avenue crossing, so the Monte Diablo Bridge. And here we do have the Fashion Island Boulevard as this second southerly one. And what we see is that it's over 1.5 miles away from the next one to the north. And so it really is identified as the longest distance between crossings in the city on this northerly side between 3rd Avenue and Fashion Island Boulevard. To the south, it's about 3/4 of a mile or a little bit less than 3/4 of a mile, still a decent distance. And so really what it means is that these corridors, these crossings become really, very important locations for us to focus our energy and make sure that we are accommodating all uses as best as we can, as safely as we can, to be able to get people across this divide. And so for that reason, we'll come to the bike master plan because the bike component is a big component of this project. And you'll see that the corridor here, which I've highlighted, is proposed as a separated bike lane. So this is the highest level of protection of on-street facility that can be proposed. And again, going back to that map that we were just looking at, there's a reason for this. It's because we want to make sure that these limited connections are protected and safe. And so again, this is the highest level of protection that we would propose for an on-street facility. And just to make sure that we're on the same page about what a separated facility is or a separated bike lane, a conventional bike lane is what's shown on the left side. And you can see that there is a stripe, there's no separation. And so bicyclists are riding right adjacent to vehicle traffic. Typically, this is an acceptable methodology where you have lower volume roadways, but where you have higher volume roadways or higher stress roadways, providing what's called a separated bike lane, which is shown on the right of these 2 images, provides some sort of vertical separation. It provides a physical barrier between vehicles and bicyclists and enhances the safety of that facility. We'll dive into some challenges along the corridor now as well. So we're going to talk about some congestion as well as the 92 ramps at Delaware. And both of these are topics that we'll want to discuss at the end. So for corridor congestion, you guys may be familiar with this image. This is a snapshot from Google Maps. This is the 101-92 interchange, and you can see those really in bright red. This is traffic at 5 p.m. on a Wednesday. And this is, again, this is just a snapshot of what this looks like. We're familiar with this as we know that there's a lot of traffic that's headed eastbound in the afternoon. We see an inverse of this in the morning, but it's not as drastic as this. And one of the challenges with this corridor, even though it's hard to make out, is that this corridor runs directly parallel to this interchange. And so what that means is as people are looking to try to get through the traffic in this area, it's common that they will look for alternative routes. And again, with this one being a parallel route, directly parallel, it's very enticing. And it gets used a lot. And so this is a corridor that we are well familiar with that has a lot of congestion. And again, this goes back to the City Council priority of wanting to see how we can address this. So that was the qualitative review of that. Quantitatively, we wanted to bring some information about a metric that we are using to address sort of corridor-wide congestion, not necessarily just at a single intersection. And so what we're looking at here is a metric called vehicle hours of delay. And it's really just the combination during this entire time period that we're looking at of how much time vehicles are not moving at free flow speeds. So how much time total are all the vehicles on the corridor sitting in traffic. And so what we see on the corridor, this is broken up by different peaks during the day, and it's broken up by direction. So in the westbound direction, we see a relatively straight line of vehicle hours of delay throughout the entire day. So 9 hours in the morning, 9 hours in the midday peak, and it jumps a little bit in the afternoon peak. When we go to the eastbound direction, we see that that changes a little bit, and it starts at 9 hours in the morning as well. But then by midday, it's jumped up about 50% to 14 hours. And by the afternoon peak, it's jumped 200%, over 200% to 32 vehicle hours of delay. And this is every single day that there's 32 hours of delay of all of the vehicles that are just waiting in traffic in this area. Moving on to the Delaware intersection, this is again one that we're very familiar with. There's a lot of interesting movements here. This particular movement, the two ramp configuration between SR92 on-ramp and 19th Avenue, while it looks fairly benign, it actually presents a lot of challenges. And so it creates some challenges in the way that you would typically design an intersection. And so in this case, we need to design our intersections to be able to accommodate turns, two different right turns from one travel lane. We need to do the same thing in the southbound, two different left turns from one travel lane. We also have challenges, which we may be familiar with this particular gas station. This is one of the best gas stations on the peninsula. Some of the best prices, great access, and it shows. We have a lot of traffic that comes in and out of this gas station. And unfortunately, it's also been identified as one of the highest concerns from the community. So in this area, as we talk about that, we know that we already have these vehicles coming from these different areas. So we have 19th Avenue traffic, which is relatively low volume. And then we have the 92 off-ramp traffic, relatively high volume. And then we get into the gas station traffic. And we have these two movements that are occurring right in this area. And to give a little bit of context, for the entire intersection, I had mentioned that the entire intersection has about 74 collisions, which is the highest number on the corridor. This intersection alone, if I remember correctly, has 47 of those. So of the 77 for the entire intersection, 47 of them are at this circled area, not even necessarily in the intersection. It's 50% more than are happening at the intersection itself. So we also have challenges here on Delaware, similar issues where we have our typical north-south traffic. And in addition to that, we know that we have traffic coming in and out. We also have right turners here, but this tends to be a challenge. Left turning vehicles coming out of the gas station, trying to fit their way into an already relatively short and busy area of people turning onto the freeway or onto 19th Avenue. All right, so we're going to jump from there right into the concept design. And I'll point out a few of the things that we're looking to try to propose to remedy some of these challenges. We're going to start at the west side of the project. This is Pacific Boulevard. You'll see the tracks on the very left side, and just north of here is the Hayward Park Caltrain station. So this is the Caltrain tracks. And again, this is where we're starting this side of the project because we are looking to establish connectivity to the Caltrain station, just transit generally, as was noted in some of the general plan priorities. So in this, what you'll see on the bottom side is, on the southerly side of 19th Avenue, is the new bike facilities that are being proposed. You'll note that this is a little bit different than typical bike facilities. These are two-way bike facilities. And the primary reason for this, I'll note on the next slide, but it's primarily to keep bike traffic, westbound bike traffic, away from the freeway ramps. Those are a really big concern in this area. And so this was proposed as a way to help alleviate some of that challenge by keeping them in this. It's not necessarily atypical. It's just a different configuration. It's not as common as your typical one-way, what we'll call one-way facilities. So in this, we're also proposing to widen the roadway. So it's not very obvious in this slide, but on the northerly side, where you see some of those white lines, those are, see if I can do this. These lines here are where the existing curb line is, and we're looking to widen out to this area so that we can maintain as much parking through this area as we can. We are going to be losing a handful of spaces in this area. There's existing 37 parking spaces here, and through this design in this section of the roadway, we're looking to maintain 28 of these parking spaces, which again is accommodated by widening the roadway. There is a section here that is actually used for Samtrans bus layovers, and we're looking to maintain that. We're working with Samtrans to make sure that that facility accommodates that. Moving on to Delaware. So this is that big intersection, and you'll see we don't have a lot of detail here just yet. And the primary reason for that is because this is an early design. This is 35% design. This is still relatively concept level. And what we wanted to do, we had heard qualitatively from the community that there was a lot of challenges with the gas station intersection. And so rather than really diving into what we think is the best thing, we wanted to make sure that we heard from the community and confirmed some of what we were hearing generally, that this is a concern. And when we did get our feedback, specifically from our online survey, this driveway on 19th Avenue in particular was listed as the top concern of, I think, 5 or 6 different options that we had given. And so one of the things that I do want to point out is the primary solution that we're proposing for at least the 19th Avenue portion of this is this proposed new median that we're looking to extend from the off-ramp all the way out towards the intersection. So you can see that here. And so what we anticipate that will do is help alleviate some of the challenges in this area, specifically the safety related challenges related to the congestion or, collisions that are happening in this area. We are anticipating still being able to provide the same amount of movements and the same type of movements that are currently being allowed at the intersection as it is today. So we are looking, you can kind of see the gray, the dark gray shading over what's existing here, and that's indicative of widening. So we're looking to utilize some of the existing Caltrans right-of-way and widen into that area to be able to accommodate the space that's needed for this off-ramp traffic. In addition to that, we're looking at still being able to maintain access through this new roadway or this new section of roadway. It's not necessarily a new section per se, but it's just going to be a newer maneuver. And again, we'd be looking to accommodate it, still being able to maintain lefts, throughs, and rights using its own signal. So it wouldn't conflict with the existing off-ramp traffic. It would get its own signal. Moving on, this is the Grant Street intersection. So you'll note that, again, we are looking to widen between Delaware and Grant. And you can kind of see this right of way here again. And We are proposing this widening again to help maintain as much parking as we can in this area. There's an existing 27 parking spaces here, and we're looking to maintain 15 of them, and that's what the current design shows. There is a possibility that when we look at some of the signal operations, which we're doing right now, that we will be able to increase the amount of parking that we're able to retain. So right now, this is shown as a preliminary design with the turn pocket lengths shown as what they are. The existing turn pocket lengths are actually quite short, and so we think that we may be able to reduce these down to accommodate some more parking. I also wanted to show some of the intersection design. So here at this intersection, you can see some of these, what some refer to as biscuits or footballs. These are small curbs that are designed to help facilitate protection of the bike and ped area. The darker color on this is intended to be what's called a truck apron. I apologize, I forgot to include the image of this in here. But what it is it is a mountable curb, and it's intended to have a passenger vehicle go all the way around it. But if needed, if we have larger vehicles through here, the larger vehicles would be able to mount it and still be able to provide the protection for the bicyclists and pedestrians here. Moving on, this is the YMCA parking lot. Here is where we are proposing currently to transition between a one-way facility. So that's the direction that's shown here. So this is westbound here and eastbound in here, compared to the two-way facility that we had running on the south side of the roadway. So this goes from this two-way again to a more typical one-way facility in this area. This intersection was originally proposed because it has some of the least amount of volume, least side street volume. And so as we're looking to make this transition, it's a little bit easier to do it when you don't have as much side street volume, a little bit easier to facilitate it with the rest of the traffic operations. However, we did get some really good feedback during our community meeting. I'll talk about this a little bit later as well. But one of the suggestions, which we think was a really great one, was that it may be worth considering pulling this transition point all the way back. I'm going to go back a slide to Grant. And the primary reason for that is because we have existing north-south facilities, bike facilities on Grant that we'd be able to connect to pretty naturally if we were to pull that one-way connection all the way down to Grant. And so we're looking at that right now. And so we would, instead of making this transition from one way on either side to two-way here, where we're facilitating this through the intersection here, we would consider doing something like that at this intersection instead. So again, facilitating that one way all the way through here in the westbound direction, and then facilitating a crossing down in this direction. And then moving on, we'll talk through the 101 southbound ramps. So largely the off-ramps are not changing. The primary reason for that is because this area is in Caltrans right-of-way. And one of the primary things that they will be looking for as we're making modifications in the area is that we're not making changes to the off-ramp congestion. And so in order to be able to maintain the operations for that, we're wanting to make sure that we're not doing any changes there. I also want to note that even though it's not very obvious here, there are freeway columns in this area. Sometimes these freeway decks get lost in this image, but there's some pretty substantial freeway columns. These are structural columns that we don't have an ability to move. We're not going to propose to move them with this project. And so we need to build around them. And so in this area, we're proposing to move the bike facility onto the sidewalk because that's going to provide the greatest level of protection while also being able to maneuver around these columns. Moving on, these are the northbound ramps. We also received some comments about the northbound ramps. There's currently a very large sweeping westbound right turn here to go onto the northbound ramps. This is one thing that we're proposing is to pull these curbs a little bit further west so that this is more of a less of a big sweep, more of a slower turn to try to facilitate that. And then moving on to Norfolk. So I zoomed out on this one a little bit so that we could see the entirety of what we're proposing here, particularly on this west side of the intersection. And so what we're looking at primarily are two things. We're looking at extending out one of these lanes, which is a common thing that we've heard is that the turn lane here is very short. And what we're doing is we're using a very wide median that exists here. It's about 10 plus feet, if I remember. I think more. And we're going to be reducing the width of that to be able to accommodate a longer lane here. And so we are able to get about 450 feet, which is about 20 vehicles worth. And so that provides additional storage here at the intersection. As vehicles come up, there is more room for them to store here at the intersection. So that way, when they get a green light, there's more vehicles already at the intersection to be able to proceed through. Right now, we're proposing 2 through lanes, a shared through left, which is this lane here, and then another through lane, which is what's existing. And we're proposing this as a way to help alleviate a lot of the traffic congestion through the area. And in order for us to be able to have 2 lanes to address the traffic, we need to be able to have 2 receiving lanes on the other side. And so we are proposing to flip the direction of the travel lanes on the bridge. And this goes back to the diagram that we were looking at with the VHD, the vehicle hours of delay, that we're seeing that the westbound volume tends to have a pretty consistent amount of delay throughout the day, but the eastbound volume tends to be disproportionately larger. And so what we're looking to do is see if we can balance that, if we can find a balance between the 2 eastbound and the westbound, to be able to provide a more equitable way to manage the traffic in both directions. There's also some of these protected intersection components here at this intersection. Right now, one of the other pieces of feedback that we're incorporating is a connection up to the existing bike facilities, existing bike lanes just north of the project limits that are shown right here. And so again, we're looking at that and looking at how to optimize the signal operations to be able to incorporate that. And so these are those movements that I was mentioning. And again, in order for us to be able to have 2 through lanes, we need to have 2 receiving lanes. And we anticipate that these lanes will be able to better accommodate the amount of volume that's coming through here in the afternoon. Moving on, we see the continuation of that lane configuration all the way down. This is one of the business parks on the other side. This is the Seal Slough Bridge that we were just talking about. One of the other things that we're proposing is some new sidewalk on the south side of the bridge. I will provide a quick update on that we are seeing that there's some challenges with the bridge structure. So we're not going to be able to build out the full sidewalk that we're anticipating, but we are still looking to provide a much more adequate pedestrian path in this area. And so this is something that we need to make sure that we're looking at very carefully, since it is obviously a structure that we need to take into consideration the civil components of that. We're looking to maintain some parking here on the north side. We have identified that a lot of the parking is generally underutilized. And so we're not looking to take away all the parking, but we are trying to maintain some parking here. And then lastly, this is the extent of the project. This is the easterly extent of the project. And what we found in this area is that the bike lanes actually extend on sidewalk, interestingly here. And so in order for us to help facilitate those connections onto the sidewalk, we're proposing these hybrid crosswalks, which allow bikes to cross in the crosswalk. They're a relatively new treatment. It's not something that we've used here in the city, but we have seen it in other places in the Bay Area. One of the other things that we're incorporating in this project is a new bus loading island. And so this is a sort of, there's a bus pad out here for people to load, and then the bike lanes go behind the bus pad, and the buses can stop in lane here. All right, moving on to outreach. So we completed a community workshop as well as put out a online survey. We held the community workshop on July 15th. This was held at the Nueva School. You can see the picture on the right is an image of that. In order to advertise this, we sent out mailers. We sent out the most mailers that we've ever sent out for a project. It was over 10,000 mailers. We also used social media platforms. And we put out A-frames, which are those sort of construction frames along the corridor and at community areas. So we put them at Trader Joe's and the Hayward Park Caltrain Station, at Fiesta Meadows, places like that where we knew the community who typically uses this corridor would see them. In the participation, we had about 50 attendees to the community workshop, and we had over 150 responses on the community or the online survey. And the online survey ran for about a month. So going through a few of the interesting pieces from the outreach, this is one that I just wanted to share. I thought that it was an interesting parallel between the online survey and the workshop, in that most people identified that the primary trips that they're taking are short trips. They're 1 to 3 miles, 5 to 15 minutes, or they're taking these medium trips. And again, you can see that between the blue and the orange online workshop or online survey versus workshop, they are largely the same all the way through. And then there's these medium trips, 3 to 10 miles or 15 to 30 minutes. And the main reason why I wanted to note this is because these numbers, the 1 to 3 miles or 3 to 10 miles, tend to align with the amount of, or the higher propensity trips to shift modes to other modes. So these short trips in particular are really prone to being able to utilize something like a bike. So it just sort of shows an opportunity more than anything, that there may be more opportunity to shift the highest amount of trips through here if we do improve the bike facilities through here. During the workshop, we also heard a lot of really strong support for the various improvements that we're proposing, including some of the sidewalk gap closure. There's currently about a 2-foot sidewalk on the south side of the Seal Slough Bridge. So providing a widened sidewalk on that southerly side was something that would be welcome. The protected intersections and protected lanes tend to get very good, they receive very good feedback. There was definitely some concerns about the one-way versus two-way transition. That's the one that I had talked to you guys about at the YMCA parking lot, that we're considering moving it down to Grant. The traffic flow and congestion was definitely a thing that we heard a lot about. The purpose of this first community meeting was to talk about the concept designs. We didn't have the traffic analysis just yet, and so we are going to be talking about that at the next one. And then just wanting to make sure again that other future developments in the area are included in any of the analysis that we're moving forward with, which it will be. Talking through some of the online survey feedback, we asked a few very pointed questions about some of the design. And so I wanted to share that feedback. So the widening, we're proposing that widening between Delaware and Grant. We're also proposing it between Pacific and Delaware, but this area tends to be more heavily parked. And we can see here that there's very strong support for that widening to be able to accommodate that parking. For the switch at the one-way to the two-way facilities at the YMCA lot, we can see here that it's a little bit more flattened out in terms of that, I guess, favor or support for this option. It's not necessarily saying that it's not supported, but it's maybe less strongly supported. And so that's something that we are considering as we're taking away the feedback from the workshop, that certainly I think it's understood the reason why we're trying to propose any sort of transition between the two, but sort of also taking away that maybe we can look into this one a little bit further. We also received pretty decent support for the switch to the 2 eastbound lanes and the 1 westbound lane across the bridge. So a lot of that was primarily neutral. So didn't seem like there was a lot of people didn't necessarily have a strong decision either for either side, but where we did get support, it tended to outweigh anything that opposed it. And then any increase in propensity to increase walking if we were to improve that south side sidewalk. And we do see that there were a lot of respondents that said that they were much more likely to walk here if that sidewalk was improved. So moving on quickly, I wanted to talk about the funding strategy for this project. So one of the challenges with the type of project that we're working through, primarily the congestion relief components of it, are that there's not a lot of funding opportunities these days for congestion relief projects. Congestion relief projects, especially big dollar projects, tend to be in the form of freeway congestion relief. You're not really finding a lot of funding opportunities for local roadway congestion relief projects. And so when we're looking at how to fund a project like this, we need to look at where the dollars actually are. And the dollars are actually in complete streets projects, safety projects, bike and ped projects. And so as we've been looking through this corridor, we do have an ability to improve the facilities that we're proposing on there with our protected bike facilities, and being able to improve safety along the corridor. But the good thing that we have going for us is a lot of the changes that we're proposing with those types of facilities also happen to align with the ability to improve or improve or address congestion in different ways. And so we're looking at similar analysis, similar numbers, so that we can have an output that addresses both types of challenges. And so, again, as we're looking to complete these large projects, we do need to be including multimodal elements, safety, and then in that, we can also include congestion relief elements. So talking about the funding that we have for this project, in addition to us, definitely needing to look for these alternative funding sources, what we have for this project is an interesting distribution of city funds versus the total grant funds that we have. So right now we have about $500,000 of city funds already contributed to the project, and the project has a total of $8.5 million of grant funds. It's typical that the city would be supplying about 10% of the funds for any of these grant projects. And that's a typical match. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down from there. But typically, we should be in for about 850,000 of this, and we're only at 500,000, which is great. But what that means is that the funding is augmented by the federal funds that we've identified for this project. And with those federal funds come different deadlines that we will need to meet in order to be able to retain them. As we look at what we're looking for our project funding goals, we're still looking at having a very low contribution, overall total contribution amount at $1.5 million. And there's a possibility that we may be able to still provide or find some grant funding for part of the city funds that I'm showing here. But for a total project cost of over $25 million, which is what we're looking at right now, the city's proportion of that funding is quite low compared to what that overall project cost is. And so again, the give and take of this is that the reason for that is that we have federal funds that have been identified for this, but what that means is that we are beholden to the federal funding requirements, that we need to meet federal funding deadlines. And so with that, I'll talk through some of the project schedule. So currently, again, we have some challenging federal funding deadlines. That in order for us to be able to retain the good balance that we have of how much the city's contributed versus how much the overall total project cost is, we need to be able to retain, we need to be able to meet those federal funding deadlines. And so we have a very aggressive schedule that's laid out in order to be able to meet those. And this is the current schedule that we have, where we're here in August. We're meeting with you guys to talk through the project details. We have a community or a council meeting coming up in September. This should be pushed out a little bit. Similarly with the community meeting, an additional community meeting. In the background of all of this, we've been pursuing with the grant, with some of the granting agencies, if there's any additional time that we may be able to have to achieve to fulfill the requirements of the grant to not lose those federal funds. And what we think we may be able to have is an additional 4 to 6 months that, again, we're talking with MTC, with CCAG about these opportunities to see if we can try to get a little bit more normalized project schedule. And while we're not necessarily getting to a full normal project schedule, it still will be very aggressive. We still do think that we're going to have a little bit more time compared to what's shown on here. We don't have a revised schedule just yet, but we may be able to again, just have a little bit more time than what's shown on here. And we would be looking to construct not necessarily this coming midsummer, but out into 2027, most likely. All right, back to the discussion points. So again, I'm looking for feedback on these proposed design elements. So the Delaware intersection at SR 92 and 19th Avenue, including the safety improvements that we're proposing versus that gas station access. I'm looking to get feedback about the swap of the lanes over Seal Slough Bridge, including those vehicle hours of delay balancing that we're proposing, as well as talking through some of the funding strategy and understanding the need for us to maintain these federal deadlines and what those federal funds are providing the city in matching funds.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Bethany. Do we have public comment, Clerk?
Madam Chair, we do. I'm also going to give some folks who came a little bit later a few seconds to come up here and give me a slip. And then anyone who is online, I'm going to give you a few moments to raise your hand if you would like to speak to this item. And if you wish to speak, please keep your hand raised. Madam Chair, it looks like that we have 12 speakers,
12 speakers. So that'll be 2 minutes apiece.
2 minutes. I'm going to start. Oh, it looks like we have 13. Still 2 minutes. Actually, we have more that are raising their hands online. I'm going to give it a few more minutes to see if people change their mind.
Yep, that's great. Thank you.
All right, so it looks like we added a few online. I'm going to start with the online speakers. I said that's likely
And what was the
easier.
total, the final total? Was it
We
13?
have, yes.
Okay.
So now, yeah, now we have about 15 speakers.
15. Okay, great.
Yeah. So we're going to maintain it at 2 minutes, correct?
Yes, 2
Okay.
minutes.
I'm going to start with the online speakers. We have about 4, unless anyone changes their mind. So I will actually call on Annie Tsai first.
Great, welcome.
Annie, can you hear us?
Hello.
All right, Annie, you have 2 minutes.
Hi there. Good evening, committee members and guests. My name is Annie Tsai. I'm a resident of San Mateo for the past 13 years. Really great presentation, Ms. Lopez. It was very thorough and thoughtful. My family and I ride the corridor 4 times a day during the school year. Our son rides in a bike bus with several friends, taking between 2 to 6 cars off the road through some of the worst commute time congestion in the city for a 1-mile ride. And that's just me. The current bike path is narrow, very bumpy, and has significant and inconsistent slope. So it's a tough ride for inexperienced riders. Last year, a youth rider in our bike bus flipped after hard braking in front of me after a driver sped ahead and cut him off at the sweeping westbound turn, getting on 101 North, as the presenter noted, and that is not in the presentation data because the car drove off. Updated and protected bike lanes will solve for all of this and more. Many parents I talk to love the idea of doing this ride with their kids or letting their kids do it, but they won't let their kids because drivers go too fast and they don't look out for cyclists. I've never, however, taken this ride without seeing other cyclists because 19th Street overpass is the only artery to reach East San Mateo in Midtown, and Hillsdale is even less safe. Today, in less than 20 minutes round trip picking up my daughter, I counted a dozen cyclists, 3 pedestrians, and 4 scooters, at least half of which were older adults in their 60s and 70s. It is already heavily used by residents of all ages, and with basic safety upgrades, even more will choose active transit, which will reduce cars on the road. Please do not delay this long-studied, community-supported, predominantly grant-funded, and much-needed multimodal improvement project. It is really a win-win for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Annie.
All right, our next speaker is going to be Lam. Lam, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear.
Awesome.
Andrew Romano, San Mateo. I would like to say that just 1% of corridor users are bicyclists, while 98% are drivers, and many included on the east side and bridge commuters. Transit policy should reflect the actual usage and needs. We've asked for the impacts to transit times to be decreased, and the city is committed to that over the many years of increased development and traffic. Funding's been set aside, but always the promise was delayed. Now, because these funds for the bike projects, the tail mustn't wag the dog. We need to traffic decreased, not increased, and remind the city that the transit times must be measured during peak hours of 4 to 7 p.m. and not averaged across the full day. Appreciate your hosting this, and thanks for the time this evening.
Thank you, Amlin.
Our next speaker will be Marvet Uto. Marvet, can you hear us?
Hi, yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation this evening. Thank you so much. My son also is a bike rider to school. He regularly rides his bicycle along this corridor on 19th Avenue, Fashion Island Boulevard, and then has to make a left-hand turn going eastbound onto Norfolk Avenue, just as you described. And then, of course, in the afternoon has to ride back westbound on that same corridor. And definitely, I am concerned about the safety as he rides his bicycle along that corridor. But of course, we want him to have that independence to be able to ride his bike. And so I'm completely in support of providing safe bike lanes along this corridor. I think it means getting additional cars off of the street in order to get to school. It provides physical activity, of course, for him, but I really would like it to be a safe place for him to ride. Equally, when I'm returning in the evenings along this corridor, I see many opportunities for pedestrians to need safe places to walk, and equally safe places for bicyclists to come into our neighborhood in Fiesta Gardens. And so I'm very in support of having a safe place for kids to ride. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marvet.
All right, and our final speaker will be Jordan Grimes. Jordan, can you hear us?
Yes, sorry, it just gave me the unmute notification. Good evening, Commissioners. Jordan Grimes, 19th Avenue Park, here in strong support of the protected bike lanes on Fashion Island Boulevard. I've been biking in San Mateo since I was a child, and I firmly believe it is one of the best ways to get around our wonderful city. I use the existing lanes on Fashion Island a few times a week to get to Target, places like Smart and Final, the Marina Library, to see friends on the east side of the city, and access many other places. And I assure you, as they exist today, the bike lanes are just extremely unsafe. I cannot tell you how many times I have had near misses myself, how many people I know who have had near misses with cars coming across the bridge over 101 at the Grant and Fashion Island intersection, etc. We really, really need a safe passage over 101 to the east side of the city, and this project will deliver that. The last thing I just want to say is, an earlier commenter noted that the bicycle usage on the corridor right now is low. And that is precisely why we need this project. That is because of how unsafe it is. If drivers had to experience the same threats to their safety anytime they got in a car, that mode share would be similar, would see similar low results. And so if we want to increase bike traffic across this corridor, which we absolutely should, it's better to get people out of cars than have them contributing to traffic. We need exactly this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jordan.
Madam Chair, that concludes the online speakers. We do have quite a bit in person. So I'm going to call them in order of when I received the slips. When I call your name, if you can either come to the podium if you're first, or if you can line up over on the side over here. I'm going to have the first 5. So I'm going to have Lincoln Smith be the first speaker. David Hunt will be second. Seema will be third. Max Mottner will be fourth, and Phil King will be fifth.
They don't all have to stand though, right? I mean, the fifth speaker has to stand for 10 minutes or 8 minutes, so they can just hang out.
Side.
You can hang out in the front.
Okay.
Please be comfortable.
Hello, thank you very much for the excellent presentation. Thank you to the members of the committee. My name is Lincoln Smith. I live in Hayward Park. I don't own a car. My bicycle is my main mode of transportation. I bicycled here today. I am strongly in support of this proposal. I think losing a few parking spaces is a small price to pay for increasing the safety for pedestrians and for bicyclists in our city. I can take the Bay Trail to work. It's relatively safe, but I have to get there from my home in San Mateo. And going over 19th Avenue is the way that I do. And I never feel 100% safe on it. So I really appreciate these proposed changes, and I'm glad to see my tax dollars going towards improvements for bicyclists. I do support moving the bike changeover from the YMCA parking lot over to Grant Street. And if you can find a way for me to get north on Delaware through that intersection alive, that would be most helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lincoln.
Hi there, good evening. I'm David Hunt. I live in Hayward Park. I used to bike this route often from Hayward Park through the Caltrain station to Fiesta Gardens with my first and third grader. Also led a small bike bus with a few other families through there. And it's super exciting to see the safety that this project will bring to that area. And so I'll share some of my experience going through there and some of the parts I'm excited about. The area near Arco was always the most challenging, especially for children. I will say I never thought I would be standing up here cheering on the widening of a road, but if that's a creative way to get that separation between the off-ramp and the Arco, it's a huge win for safety through there. I'll just reiterate, that was the scariest area to go through. And it was the biggest reason that, days we were not feeling up for it, we probably wouldn't bike with our kids. Additionally, I wish this was there when we were going to that school. Our school switched. We don't go through there to go to school any longer. There's other families that do. Some of them you heard from tonight. But it's amazing to see the opportunity there. And overall, it's a really amazing project. I'm excited for this huge step forward in safety in the city, especially for children. And I'll say there's a number of times we picked our kids up from school on bikes, biked home, got in our car, went to Target because we didn't feel safe going over 101 on the bikes with the kids. A project like this would make that trip much safer. Still not perfect. I would love if it went all the way there, but it's a huge step in the right direction. That last little bit, riding on the sidewalk is reasonable. I'm super excited for it. I think the design as it is awesome. Thanks for the great presentation.
Thanks, Dave.
Hi, good evening. My name is Seema. I currently serve as the chair of the Planning Commission, but I'm speaking tonight on my own behalf as a resident of District 3, where this project is located, and in strong support of the proposed project. The most important responsibility of the government is to keep its residents safe. Public safety isn't just about crime. It's also about making sure residents can move through the city without being injured or killed. Unfortunately, we are failing in that responsibility right now, with 3 pedestrian deaths and 1 critical injury over a recent 5-month period. Mark Kramer was killed in February walking along this very project corridor. This project provides critical public safety improvements to this roadway, including protected bike lanes and safer pedestrian crossings. I understand some people would prefer the roadway to be widened to add another vehicle lane. As staff noted, there's not really funding for this, but also there's an exhaustive body of research that shows adding vehicle lanes does not reduce traffic in the long term. The only way to reduce traffic is by removing vehicles from the road. And the way we do that is by making walking, biking, and public transit safe and accessible. Every time my family chooses to bike to Apple Fritter or Target, which we do regularly, instead of taking our car, that's 1 less car on this road contributing to traffic. I also urge you to consider the long-term growth of San Mateo. In the last 5 months, we received applications for 5,000 new units of housing. If SB 79 passes in the state legislature, the half-mile area around our Caltrain stations will be upzoned to 100 to 120 units per acre, creating the potential capacity for 150,000 new units of housing. It's not physically possible to expand our roads to accommodate 300,000 new cars. We need to be planning now for the needs of our community 20 to 30 years from now. Let's not kick this can down the road as this problem gets worse and worse. Please support this project to keep our residents safe and to help reduce the traffic impacts of future growth. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Seema. And members of the public, I ask that you please do keep your own private conversations to a minimum when there are public commenters, as it's difficult to hear sometimes if we hear the side chatter up here. Thanks so much.
Next speaker is Max.
Hi, commissioners. Thank you for your service. I'm Max Mautner. I'm a San Mateo resident. Read the discussion points that staff member Lopez asked for input about. I appreciate the configuration change at Fashion Island and Norfolk. I appreciate it sounds like improved congestion mediation that you've got there. Also, as far as safety versus access to the gas station, I volunteered on the bike bus that Dave is describing with his children, and we took the sidewalk at that gas station. So I'd hope that we'd prioritize safety to accessing what is now College Park Elementary. I also want to thank staff for sharing how this project aligns with the city's general plan 2040 goals. The community here can't plan for growth without projects exactly like this one. This project specifically moves forward several of the city's stated priorities, and significantly at that. So I want to also say about the designs that I really appreciate the elimination of the slip right turns at Norfolk and Fashion Island. I rode my bike through the intersection earlier today, and I can see how the elimination of those is a tremendous safety improvement, not just for bikers, but primarily walkers, I'd imagine, versus what is today the status quo. So a quick question to staff, while I got time, is about the two-way cycleway maintenance. I know that a cycleway has gone in Burlingame, and I ride it often, and it's on a tree-lined stretch with eucalyptus trees, so it has a lot of droppings. And it doesn't mean that you get flats a tremendous amount, but it's something that's maybe a maintenance concern to consider. And then lastly, I just want to emphasize how public comment has this very serious selection bias. We're in this city hall right now. It's accessible by one bus, not very accessible from the east side, especially east of 101. So we do have a selection bias as far as who makes it to these meetings. And I just want to call that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Max.
Our next speaker will be Phil, and then after that, I will have Trina and Susan and Rich get ready to talk.
Thanks for the great presentation, and thanks for the opportunity to comment. I'm Phil King. I'm a parent at College Park Elementary School at our new campus this year. I lived on South Delaware and now on 25th Ave for 22 years. So I know the area super well, both as a driver and a cyclist. It's indeed congested. The gas is indeed cheap at ARCO, and it's a very busy area. So I also served on the city's Safe Routes to School Commission last year. So I have kind of that lens where I really want to speak about safety for kids getting to school, families and kids together, as well as kids by themselves, on foot and on bike, especially. So I promised several families at our school that I'd speak tonight a little bit about the importance of improving safety for cyclists in the corridor, and especially the overcrossing over 101. I've been really impressed that there's quite a few families already on just the first and second days of school who are showing up on bikes, talking about coming in from the east side, which they maybe weren't able to do before going to our old campus. And they're excited, but they also feel a lot of anxiety going over that overcrossing. It's very busy, it's very hectic, as several people have noted, and there's those pretty scary on-ramps, especially in the westbound direction. So folks asking for updates on this and really hoping for improvement. So additionally, multiple folks actually on my block now on 25th Ave send their kids to middle school at Bayside Academy. I've been super impressed learning that their kids are riding solo, but I also see the anxiety on those parents' faces over the last couple of years as their kids are going off in the morning, crossing El Camino, but then also crossing the freeway. We really need safety in this corridor. I hope I can send my daughter, she's in 3rd grade now. I hope I can send her to Bayside on her bike as well when she gets there. So thanks for this opportunity for those comments, and thanks for keeping these things in mind.
Thank you, Phil.
Good evening to the commissioners and to the dedicated youth commissioners over there. My name is Trina Pierce. I live in North Central. I've been in North Central for over 65 years. I urge the city to halt all new bike lane installations until the issues with Humboldt Street bike lanes has been rectified. The vote from council was to restore parking to the residents in this equity priority community. The residents have been patiently waiting for this restoration to take place. In North Central, over 200 parking spaces were removed, hurting the neighborhood, especially seniors and residents with disabilities the most. When I launched the petition years ago, nearly 80% opposed removing bike spaces to install a new bike lane. Why spend additional money to do this in other neighborhoods before fixing the damage that was done to the North Central residents, along with the many residents that live on Humboldt Street? San Mateo claims to support seniors and has won awards for seniors. Yet our seniors living here for 60, 70, even 80 years are confused as to why just their neighborhood has and they have such an unwanted impact on that. Many come to the conclusion because of who we are, where we live, and our low incomes. The city promised to return parking on Humboldt Street, but yet as of today, that promise still remains broken. And instead, we get notices of additional meetings and dots on the board. We deserve the same respect as any community. Please honor the city's promise. Fix North Central first, and instead of hurting other San Mateans. Thank you for taking time to allow me to read.
Thank you, Trina.
Hi, good evening. Susan Manheimer, proud East Side resident, retired police chief. I am also the vice president of the San Mateo United Homeowners Association, though speaking on my own tonight. Thank you all for this study session and for all of the attention put towards this. I will say that as my former role as police chief, as well as a very, very active East Side resident, myself and others, I think, have been extremely reasonable in embracing supportive housing, development, and business interests over on the East Side, recognizing it's really the future for our development, supportive housing, and the economic engine. And that is because over time, we have been promised time and again, traffic mitigation efforts. In fact, some of the projects that we supported actually had set aside monies that later, I believe, were used for other projects as there was nothing. I think it very unfortunate that traffic mitigation of the most impacted corridor of 19th Avenue is 39th on a list of all of the projects and infrastructure, because we have been doing so much to really bear more than I think the rest of the city, and gladly so, to support this city and its goals. But we need that traffic mitigation. Bethany, I love the work that you do. I appreciate all that you have sought out tonight, but you did not ask us to even comment on the congestion mitigation efforts. That wasn't even part of the feedback, because I think it's pretty much a done deal that we're just going to be further harmed by this. 42 minutes it took me to get home tonight from the 101 North South. And I don't have the benefit of riding to Apple Fritter on my bicycle. I'm a commuter, just like all of the other commuters that are trying to get home or to our businesses on the East Side that are taking 30 to 40 to 50 to 60 minutes. I would hope that on this bike project, you are going to give more than lip service to the residents.
Thank you, Chief.
Who desperately need some relief there. Thank you very much.
Rich Hedges, thank you, Senate Committee, and Bethany especially, thank you, and Matt. I'm here today, and I've made this clear that I think the bike lanes are a good idea, but they can't be done without traffic mitigation. I sit in the traffic, which I have time to do. I don't get too excited by it. Others do. And I've seen some very crazy moves by drivers, including at least 3 cars and several times I've seen run the red light after they were stopped for the red light. I think putting in these bike lanes is a good idea, but if we don't do traffic mitigation, there's going to be some danger to the bikers. People are going to make crazy right-hand turns. I've seen it happen. They're going to do it after the lights turn red, and they're not going to be mindful of bikers as they cross when the light is green. When Strata was going forward, they were the developer for the Pulte development. A number of us went to those meetings and kept cajoling Strata, and they wrote a check for $250,000 for mitigation at that intersection. We want that plus other money used for the mitigation to that intersection. I walk often to Caltrain. I was surprised the report said it was 1.33 miles. I thought it was less than that. But I'm very disappointed by this project that there's not going to be a sidewalk for a considerable distance between Grant and the freeway on the north side of the street. That I had to cross that busy intersections 3 times when I was walking to Caltrain, which extended my trip as well as made the walk much more dangerous for me. Now people have to do it at least twice if they're being safe. So one other comment on the crossover at Grant for bike lanes. You really need to do a scramble there because it doesn't. If you do a scramble, people aren't limited turning right with pedestrians and bicycles, and no one will be moving when the scramble's on.
Thank you, Rich.
Our last 3 speakers will be Rick, Michael, and Laura, if you would all like to make your way up to the front.
Good evening. Thank you. And I appreciate the presentation that was made on the project. It was much easier to understand than the community meeting. I'm from the east side. Let me say that no one on the east side is opposed to increased safety, but the ongoing issue has been congestion relief for 19th and Norfolk. That's been promised to us for over 30 years, going back to Arnie Croce. But like flood improvements, the can keeps getting kicked down the road, and people on the east side are very frustrated and feeling ignored. The community supported the Strata Pulte project. And as Rich noted, he negotiated for the $250,000 of traffic mitigation, which we haven't seen yet. And other projects such as Concar Passage and others in the corridor will add more traffic, but should also contribute more traffic mitigation money. I would suggest that we begin traffic mitigation now to gain support for the project and to bring some relief to the people on the east side that are sitting in that traffic and are opposing the project because of the traffic issues. More importantly, I think we need good, solid, realistic data, statistically valid data to justify the expense and any incremental congestion or pollution that may be caused by altering the corridor. I feel it's important that we understand the usage before we spend $27 million. We were supposed to have learned from the Humboldt bike lane failures. Our former mayor and council member Amo Lee said if we had to do it over again, we would do it differently. Like Humboldt and Valencia Street and California Drive and high-speed rail, we have to be honest and learn from our mistakes. There's an old saying, those that do not learn from their mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat them. So please look very carefully at this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening. Thank you for the presentation. Michael Reagan, 47 years living in this wonderful city. Current president of Beresford Hillsdale Neighborhood Association. Speaking on my behalf this evening. I also sat on the Citizens Advisory Bicycle Master Plan several years ago, and so quite familiar with this project, and also work extensively in and around all of San Mateo. Also went to many of these areas when I was on the committee and looked at the different areas and that type of thing. So what's the problem? I mean, we should all be happy about getting grant money, putting bike lanes in. I'm a huge bike advocate. I bicycle all the time. So what's the problem? What are we really dealing with? And what we're really dealing with is the city of San Mateo. We're a city that has 92, 101, 280, and traffic galore up and down. I was just on 92 trying to get home, and it was all the way up past Hillsdale and everybody who's getting off on Hillsdale and coming down. So the problem is trying to install bike lanes that are safe for the pedestrians, and it's just a difficult decision that you have to make. We want to put bike lanes in, we should, but the difficulty is the driving habits of the people that come in out of our city. If we were just dealing with the citizens of our and residents of our city, we'd have a much easier time convincing. We have too many people coming into our city that don't live here and just want to get in and out of our city, and trying to tell the public that we're going to build these bike lanes and they're going to be safe is kind of a misnomer. I'd love for it to happen. I know the funding's there. I know the problem we had before was the grant money to get this stuff done. It's there now, and I wish you guys luck, but as they were saying earlier, we have to do traffic mitigation in order for all this to work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura will be our last speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. It really enlightened me as to the project. One of the things that I find most dangerous about this corridor is the lack of lighting, and that was not addressed at all in this. And I often see kids on bicycles, especially in the winter. You can't see them in these bike lanes. This whole corridor is extremely dark, especially the bridge on Seal Slough has no lighting. Emergency vehicles at Fashion Island in Norfolk, traveling westbound and then going north on Norfolk. I don't know how they're going to get through your plan because you're crowding a lot of stuff, 3 lanes and a bike lane in that one area. And also coming from Norfolk, going towards the Y, it's going to be very difficult too. So I think there needs to be some plan for that. As another gentleman mentioned, there were several places where sidewalks were taken out. I personally would not ride a bike over to the Y, although I go there all the time. I'm a Parkside resident, but I would walk, and I have walked, and it is dangerous. So I'm really concerned about the sidewalks being taken out. Addressing the traffic near the gas station is crucial. And that really does need to be looked at very, just for traffics and pedestrian, cars and pedestrians, it's very dangerous right there. So the other thing this does not address is all the people that get off the freeway and use 92 as a cut through to Foster City. You know, they get back onto 92, they go from 101 to 92. You know, maybe we should have no right turns at the first light past the Seal Slough, like Foster City. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Laura. Madam Clerk, could you repeat the names of the last 3 speakers one more time for me?
Yes, we had Laura was our latest. We had Michael Reagan, and then we had Rick Sakuda.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. And does that conclude public comment?
That concludes public comment.
Amazing. Thank you so much to the 13 public commenters. We absolutely love it when the public engages at the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission meetings. It brings us such joy and delight. And so just really appreciate you all taking the time out of your evenings to come and speak and share your thoughts. Much appreciation. All right, with that, we're going to open up questions. Oh, 5-minute break? Yep. Okay. So we have a request for a 5-minute break. It is 8:20 right now, so we'll come back at 8:25. So hold tight. Alrighty, everyone, we're gonna come back. Alrighty, we are back. Thank you, everyone, for that brief break. Much appreciated. And so now that we've concluded public comment, I'm going to turn it over to my fellow commissioners for clarifying questions of staff. Feel free to also provide any comments that you'd like to provide at this time as well, but also because everyone will then get the benefit of hearing all the clarifying questions of each other, we'll do one more final round of comments at the end once everyone's clarifying questions are addressed. So with that, any commissioners would like to go first with their clarifying questions? Thanks, Vice Chair.
Thank you. And Bethany, as usual, thank you for that really thorough and presentation that was really made it clear about what we're talking about here. A lot of my questions are reactions to some of the comments we heard, but I guess the first one I wanted to better understand is you started your presentation talking about collisions. So while I think this bike throwaway will be amazing for the many reasons mentioned, can you go a little bit further into how it'll improve collisions or exactly where those were happening? Or is it primarily because of that median that's going in? I know that's we're like 47. So is that the main source of improving collisions?
For that particular location, yes. That right there at that driveway, the police department did have like a separate set of data for that particular driveway, and that's how we were able to see it parsed out between the actual intersection of 19th and Delaware and then that driveway at the gas station. And what we anticipate the reasoning for that, even though it's hard to see exactly why, a lot of it has to do with how much volume is going through there. The amount of volume going into that going into that site and coming out of that site functions almost as if it's a small roadway with how much volume there is and with how little space there is for folks to maneuver in and out of there. And then you have the off-ramp traffic coming through there as well that's uncontrolled. We're anticipating that a lot of that just has to do with the amount of people primarily coming out of the gas station. And so we do think that adding that median and restricting those maneuvers and their interaction with the off-ramp traffic will help address a lot of those collision challenges.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah. So let's talk. You wanted comments specifically on the ARCO too, and that intersection. So if you don't mind, it's always easier when the map is on. So I've definitely made that risky right-hand turn from the freeway off ramp into the ARCO. So now people going off that off ramp at the light, we would turn right and then turn right again into, is that what you expect people to do? Because that I could see that causing its own traffic issues over there.
Exactly. And sorry, I'm trying to pull up the map to be able to share that as well. And I think it's hidden here somewhere. There we go. Give me 1 second. So coming up to this intersection, so let me do the design one. So here I think is, thank you. Give me one more moment. All right, so this is the location that we're talking about, I believe, and let me see if I can go back one really quickly so we can see the fuller context. So yes, with the median that we're proposing right in this area, what that would mean is that if there are any folks that are wanting to go into the gas station, that they would need to make a right turn here at the intersection and travel south on Delaware to be able to get into the gas station. What we are looking to maintain is the access coming out. And again, that's where it was really important that we are maintaining an access point here And this is both for vehicles coming through on 19th Avenue already, as well as for people coming out of the gas station that they can maneuver again without having to travel back to Delaware to be able to get through and to their destination.
Did you do like a traffic analysis of what may happen on that right turn on Delaware into the gas station?
This one here,
No,
or we're looking at
yeah.
this one here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we don't have, it's not really typical that we would do a traffic analysis of a site. So it's not necessarily that we're not looking at what the site operations are, but we are recognizing that we will see additional traffic coming southbound and through here. In looking at this really just high level, the amount of traffic that's coming in here right now is both inbound and outbound. And so I can foresee that there would be a lot more streamlined movements, having all of the direction of traffic flow be sort of this clockwise manner, rather than you kind of have both counterclockwise and clockwise traffic coming in and out of here. And so, again, we don't have analysis on the operations of that site, but we are anticipating that folks will come down Delaware to get into there.
Great, thank you. Sorry, where was and then it seemed to me, and you don't need to, depending how prepared you are, but it seems to me that I was listening to the comments about traffic mitigation for those East Side communities, and it seems that this project will include a lot of traffic mitigation. So I was wondering if maybe you could highlight specifically how it would help East Side folks, or maybe just be prepared at the next community meeting to present on that specifically.
Yeah, certainly. So we're in the process of doing the traffic analysis for this. And just to shed a little bit more light on this process, the traffic analysis and the intersection design, everything that you see on here, it's an iterative process. And so we test out different options and then we put it into the design and make sure that it works with the design. And if it doesn't work there, we'll come back to the traffic operation. So it kind of goes back and forth and they go hand in hand until we find an optimized design and traffic operation scenario. And so we're in that process right now of identifying what that optimized design looks like. And so what we're seeing right here is not necessarily the final, but we are definitely looking at a few improvements that we are anticipating pulling through in all of the scenarios that we're looking at for the traffic operations, including this widening here to be able to accommodate an extended turn or an extended lane here. Currently, there's only one lane here. And so with the amount of volume that we have here and the amount of volume that needs to get accommodated at the intersection or at the signal, there's not enough time, especially with the amount of delay that it takes vehicles to get through the eastbound. There's not enough time for them all to get through. And what that creates is an issue of a continuous backup that can never actually be alleviated getting through the intersection. And so what we're hoping to do is address this in a twofold manner. Again, provide additional storage here. So now we have more space for vehicles to wait. And then by the time they get to the signal and they get a green light, double the amount of vehicles can actually go through the intersection. And so we're hoping that that sort of twofold approach can help address a lot of the challenges at this particular intersection and alleviate some of the challenges further west on the corridor in the eastbound direction. We'll have the full analysis of that at the next community meeting.
Perfect.
So we'll have the data.
And were those comments about traffic mitigation, were they implying a certain project or just in general? Like, this doesn't replace a project that would have gone in there instead for traffic mitigation, I'm assuming or asking.
So I think there's a reference to funding that was provided by a developer. I believe it's the Pulte Homes developer that was referenced. They provided $250,000 for traffic mitigation. I forgot to include it in the presentation previously, but that $250,000 has been used as part of the city's matching funds for the grant funding that we have right now. So that is being used for this effort for traffic, for congestion relief parts of this.
And since we're on this slide, I'm not sure, but maybe that's the development you're referring to, but where the fish market was and so on, is more housing going in there?
There has been a proposed project there, and that was one of the comments that we received from the community meeting is to make sure that we're including that traffic in our traffic analysis, which we do have planned to do.
And I should probably know this, but if the city has development impact fees or some sort of traffic mitigation fees, I think that could be a great opportunity from a developer there to help improve this funding and more ideas for this area too. And then keeping on with the comments we heard, can you show the sidewalk where that is, or where is sidewalk being removed or just not added?
Yeah, we're not removing any sidewalk. We were proposing, the primary location where we were proposing to add new sidewalk was actually here on the Seal Slough Bridge. And you can see my cursor here. We were proposing to add this on the existing bridge deck. And I had referenced it briefly in the presentation that in looking at the structural design of the bridge, it doesn't look like we'll be able to actually support the weight of new concrete on the bridge itself, but we do still have room to accommodate a pedestrian path there. So it would be a wider pedestrian path. Again, there's only a 2-foot path right now. And so we would be able to provide a widened path in that area that's more correlative with what a sidewalk would provide.
And then closer to the train station, are there patches without sidewalks?
So there's a part of the project, I'm trying to pull it up here, that there is no sidewalk that exists and the project is not proposing to install it. And this is the 19th Avenue. I apologize, we don't have the names on here. So 19th Avenue comes in here. It continues as Fashion Island Boulevard here. This is the 19th Avenue frontage road, and this is the YMCA parking lot. So we usually refer to it as the YMCA intersection. And so there is no sidewalk here. You can see that it terminates there. And that continues all the way to this side. And the project is not currently proposing to install sidewalk on that side.
Okay. I think that's it for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, other questions? Youth commissioners, any questions? All right, Youth Commissioner Scott.
Thank you. I really like the presentation. I just had one clarifying question about the traffic. So on the Seal Slough Bridge, there's going to be a transition from 2 westbound lanes to 1. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I was just wondering, do you anticipate there's going to be more traffic, like the VHR, the hours, or is that going to increase to the rates of the eastbound before? Is that really going to do much given making the two lanes? Will all the traffic just build up on the one side, or how do you think that's going to work?
Just to clarify, are you referencing the westbound traffic in this area?
Yeah.
You're asking if that's going to increase?
Yeah. Do you think it's going to increase substantially?
Yeah, we don't have the numbers for that right now. We don't have the analysis just yet. It's a good question though. What we were seeing in the vehicle hours of delay is that there's an imbalance between the westbound and the eastbound amount of congestion or VHD that's experienced. And so while yes, we are looking to decrease the eastbound, we think that that will necessitate some increase in the westbound. And again, we're going back to that design process that I was talking about, the iterative process, that will be going back and forth, trying to minimize the impacts to anybody, to all movements, while trying to provide some benefit to the eastbound in that area.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Great, thank you. Additional clarifying questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you, Bethany, for that presentation as well. Just a few questions. I did also had that question about reversing the lanes and just keeping an eye on how that might adverse effects. A question about the traffic signal. I know it's minor compared to everything else, but can you explain a little bit about the upgrades to the traffic signal? And in your answer, would you categorize that as also traffic mitigation to upgrade those? Would that be under that category? Can you explain what that would mean?
Sure. Yeah. So along the corridor, so as we look to address congestion congestion generally, we're looking at it at a corridor level, not solely at an intersection level. And so that is part of the reason for some of the intersection upgrades that we're talking about. When we're doing upgrades these days, we're including things like upgraded video detection. That's one of the biggest things that we're including these days. So the sort of old standard of doing detection for vehicles, a lot of people think that it's sort of weight related. It's actually these loops that are in the ground, and they're electromagnetic induction loops. And so when a vehicle goes over it, breaks the electromagnetic field, and that's what indicates that there's a vehicle presence. They're very old technology. And so these days, video detection technology is able to detect vehicles and bicyclists and pedestrians. Not only, this is a little bit of a weird statement, but before with video detection, you would see anything that's moving is almost seen as a vehicle. It's just, we're going to call it a vehicle. But now the video detection is so good that it can discern a vehicle from a bike, from a pedestrian. And so we can tailor the way that the signal responds to who is actually there because we can actually see who's there. And so before it was very difficult to see how many bikes or how many vehicles. And now we can get that level of data to be able to use it when we're responding to some of the way that the traffic volume is actually present. There's other intersection improvements that we're looking at as well. So things like CCTV, we're including bike signals, which are not necessarily a very advanced technology per se, but it's a new implementation that we're doing that provides safety improvements for bicyclists in particular. And we also include things like closed caption television cameras, and that's there so that staff can monitor the intersection. We have an ability to monitor intersections real time and make adjustments to traffic signals in that way.
And that does fall, in your mind, under the category of addressing traffic mitigation, right? That's like part of the strategy.
Yes.
And then that also is part of the strategy of this big orange line where you're stacking people, we're stacking cars, and the strategy of that traffic signal is key to that, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Can you address one of the commenters' concerns about lighting?
Yes, that is a component of the project that we are looking into. It's not something that was included in this initial sort of layout. This is very much a concept design still, even though we do call this 35% design. So the project team is looking for opportunities to include lighting. It was something included in the scope. We are not sure where we're going to land with lighting on the bridge deck. And again, that goes back to some of the challenges with some of the structural support on the bridge deck. Sorry, not to say lack thereof, but a potential for additional components to be added to the bridge. So we're still looking into that.
In terms of parking spaces, that would be, again, if this would go all the way through in the way it is right now, am I correct that in total it would be 21 spaces lost between from 37 to 28 and then from 27 to 15?
I apologize. I haven't done the math on that yet, but it was 9, 6, and 14, 29. Is that what you had?
I got 21.
21? I'll have to get back to you
Okay.
when I get the math done.
And then finally, on the sense of urgency because of federal funding, I know you already explained that there's a little bit more runway than I think was in our packet, but can you go a little bit just, again, to make people feel like they're not being rushed through this? Can you explain a little bit about how, if at all, it affects the timeline for the second community meeting? And also, at what stage of design will the community see, what stage of design will it be at when the community sees that second round?
Yeah, certainly. So we are looking at any potential additional time. We're still working through a revised schedule. So we don't have that just yet. That's why I presented the one that we have, which is the one that we have currently. That was intending to be planned for the end of September. What we are hoping to pivot to is that we're able to hold that meeting. That's going to be potentially a little bit later than what we're showing right now. So maybe a little bit further into the fall timeline, and we'd like to be able to present 65% design plan. So it's a little bit more baked, a little bit more, sorry, not baked, a little bit more fleshed out from what we're at now, but certainly not final. And so 65% design provides more of the civil designs, more of the components that are identified as constraints are starting to be worked out in that phase. So we can have more refined answers at that time. We're also anticipating that by 65% design, we'll have the traffic analysis to share.
Great. And then after 65, what would be the other steps after 65 for either the community or this commission or the council to continue to effectuate change?
I think we're still looking at how best to accommodate any potential additional community meetings. It is our goal to try to get, the community's involvement as much as possible. We just don't have the updated timeline to be able to speak to that just yet.
Thank you.
Well, it's unanimous. It was a great presentation.
Okay.
Thank you for being so plain spoken and easy to understand. So you're familiar with the show Mythbusters. Some of the comments we got in here is that if we add a lane of traffic for traffic mitigation, the traffic's going to get worse. Kind of flies in the face of reality. Do you want to weigh in on that? Is that urban legend or is that really how it works?
So a lot of the feedback about adding travel lanes has to do with the concept of induced demand.
Right.
It's a well-studied issue. A really common case study was in the 405 freeway in Southern California that they added a lane of traffic, took them a lot of years to do it, and then immediately had almost the same amount of traffic congestion as they had before. And the suggestion is that when you build more people are inclined to utilize that network or that roadway segment, and hence the idea of induced demand. Certainly not saying that's not the case here. I think there is some nuance, and I can't say that I've done the full research on this, but I do think that there's some nuance in the fact that we're talking about a corridor that has a number of signalized intersections on it, where there is an ability to modify the signal timing, control travel flows in a little bit of a more curated manner than if you were to just have it on a freeway where it's just an open stretch of travel lanes. So not, again, saying that we're not going to induce demand, but just suggesting that there is a nuance here in the type of facility that we are working on versus what a lot of people are familiar with in induced demand.
That study also talks about instead of the traffic time being 4 hours, it's now 3 hours and 20 minutes because although if you chemistry, Charles, the gas laws, the gas wants to go even dispersion like in a balloon. It's even pressure all around. Yeah, but the hours that there is traffic is much less. So I think that's the gist of this whole thing. So thanks for that. That's pretty important. I still would like to be an advocate and a push for the bike bridge at Hillsdale. I think bang for the buck, that's huge. That's it's going to link more densely populated areas to the shopping mall over by Whole Foods. I think that's, I hope that doesn't get left on the cutting room floor. So I've talked to a bunch of people about this, citizens. It's one of the things about being a commissioner, people all of a sudden know who you are. And they're concerned about a quick build versus a quality build. And I know you guys are all about quality, but I just want to put it out there that it's something I think the citizens are moderately concerned about, that we want to make sure we do this right the first time, especially as San Mateo exponentially grows with all the building. We only get really one shot at doing this, and rather than make this look like Chicago or New York. Can we do something like Foster City? I have a theory that there's only two kinds of problems in the world, mine and others. And what Foster City did was, although we hate it, was for them, yeah, it worked. It's pretty brilliant. We commingle and share the road with people who are trying to shortcut the way to the bridge to get to the East Bay. And really, that's the elephant in the room. That's probably really the crux of the problem. Is there any, has there been given any thought to mitigating that? Is there anything we can do?
We have looked at, we've looked at some things that we can do. I think some of the challenge, just to be a little bit sensitive about it, is that the people that are using the roadway network are not only the people who are trying to cross the bridge. There's people who live south of Norfolk, for instance, or south of Mariners, like other Foster City residents or other San Mateo residents. And so what we tend to see is that anytime that we do any sort of traffic calming in the realm of alleviating or addressing cut-through traffic in particular, it tends to be impactful to the community in a different way than just putting in like speed bumps. It tends to be these turn restrictions that have consequences for a community, but the benefits of addressing that cut-through traffic would end up outweighing the cost to them, which tends to be longer routes, more circuitous routes, things like that. So not to say that it's not a possibility. It's not one that we're exploring with this project. And it's something that would require a lot of community outreach.
Got it. Yeah, Third Avenue is a good example of that. In the afternoon with all the corporate buses and people trying to get to the bridge, it's almost impassable. So, okay. If you could we turn to the sectional design map, the first page? You brought it up earlier.
Say which one again?
That is Norfolk. So it would be it would be west of that position. It'd be the one closest to the gas station.
Got it.
That one. So a couple of quick questions, and they're just questions, they're not suggestions. Does it make sense? Do we need to deconflict that intersection? Are there too many cars in that intersection currently?
That's a good question. No. It's busy. It's very busy. And there's some really interesting turning movements, and the way that the signals are currently operating are not necessarily optimized for the volume that's there. And we're looking into that.
But at the traffic hours, it's not backed up into forever. It's not that bad, you're saying?
So backup versus the volumes, they're two different things. And we're hoping to be able to address backups associated with what's happening at this intersection, because the volumes we think we can actually facilitate if the signal is operating more appropriately.
I see. Okay. So a little bit further down, not right even there, if we could scope out a little bit, does it make sense to approach the YMCA about putting the bike lane under those bridge supports, or bents as they're called, to get the bike lane even further away from the roadway, so it's not at all it would be cheaper to build, and it would be definitely great separation. You'd be away from the cars. Does that make any sense?
So just so that I'm understanding, what side are you referring to?
Can I use this?
Oh, yeah.
I always want to ask. So where is?
So the YMCA is out this way.
Right. So if we took this, of course, now it doesn't work. You dirty dog. So if you look at the upper, where your cursor is right now, if we were to create a bike lane on the other side of the supports of the bents, I don't know, can you scope out on that, or go to the next map, west?
So this is the YMCA right up in this area.
Okay. So so basically in the sidewalk that's adjacent to their parking lot, where there are supports, have you thought about that? Is that something that would serve your purposes a lot better?
Just so that I'm clear, the suggestion is potentially to add sidewalk in this area, within the parking lot, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I go to the Y. I've seen what it looks like, and it's a pretty expansive area. There's no cars parked there. It's concrete, and it's the supports are kind of in the way. Is that something that you've investigated? Would it help?
We have not investigated it. I'm not saying that it wouldn't help. The primary challenge through this area has to do with a lot of the Caltrans right of way constraints. One of the things that I've come to understand going through this project is who has agreements with whom. The city has agreements with Caltrans for the roadway operations in this area. This property owner has a maintenance agreement with Caltrans for the use of the street level part of under the bridge, for instance. And so we would need to work through Caltrans and probably this property owner if we had an interest in doing that. Again, not a part of the scope of this project, but certainly an interesting consideration.
Okay. So a little bit further east, trying to do this from memory. So the bike lane would be on both sides of 19th, even approaching the 101 North entrance, because that is the super dangerous. I drive there daily, and I've seen so many close calls with, and you're very, very exact on the dot. Because of the long sweeping turn that goes on to 101 North, people pick up speed, then they don't need to scrub the speed off. And it makes it more dangerous because of the delta speed for the bicyclist versus the car. Yeah, it gets close sometimes. So it's probably an awesome idea. Would it make more sense or additional sense to have some sort of a traffic control device there? If a pedestrian shows up, it would turn red or at least flash?
Yeah, that's something that we're looking at. We definitely are looking at that. We heard that from the community meeting as well, that there's a lot of concerns about the uncontrolled nature of this intersection.
Right.
One of the things that we're unfortunately having to strike a balance about for this project is the potential to add new traffic controls has it has the potential to impact air quality, which is a part of the grant funding that we need to be able to get through and clear. And so, so there's some limitations on what we can do. I'll say that, but
sure.
At the same time, we are looking and trying to see if there's any sort of out of the box solutions that we can consider for how to control this intersection. That is something that we'd heard pretty clearly.
Okay, so a little bit further east at Norfolk and 19th, there's an intersection. I've seen this frequently in Canada, so Vancouver, Montreal, where there's a diagonal bike lane where when the eastbound traffic is turning south and the westbound traffic is turning north, and there's no cross traffic, the diagonal would be open. Is that something you might consider to make a diagonal cross that would be controlled by a walk signal or a ride signal? Would that something you could think of would work?
So tell me one more time the directions, just so that I understand.
So if you go over to where right there, so go a little bit further east, stop there, and go diagonal across the intersection to there, make that a bike lane, and it would be green, would have lights on it. So when the people are turning like this, the center section is open. I've seen it in Canada quite a bit. Other countries also, Hong Kong's got it, and it seems to work. I don't know. I don't know if that's something we don't do in the US.
Yeah, it's not something that we would typically do, but one of the other things to note about this intersection is that there are a lot of right turning vehicles. And part of the way that we're looking to facilitate those right turning vehicles is implementing what's called right turn overlaps. And so that means when there's a corresponding left turn going on, so in this case, a northbound left turn, we would also have a corresponding right turn,
right on red,
eastbound right turn arrow, and it helps facilitate additional right turn volume through the intersection. Not to say that that would be a limitation of this proposal, but just something to consider that we do have a lot of that volume, but we also have a lot of east-west volume. And so it's really difficult for us to just hold all of that while we have those crossings. That is the longest distance that folks would cross. And so it necessitates a longer amount of time. And so not one that we've looked at.
Okay, so if you go to the polar other side of that intersection, so if you go to the traffic light, go to the right and then down where that crosswalk terminates, go down right there. There is a rather substantial freeway column right there. I'm guessing you guys already know about this. I'm seeing on your graphic on the other side where you want to put the extra turn lane in, there's no depiction for the bent, and it's huge. It's 21 feet across. And what it's going to limit you on is the queuing amount of cars can queue up because you can't remove the support. It's just not right there. It's not doable. So I'm kind of curious. Many people were curious is like, I see your drawing, but it's NTS. It's not the scale. You don't have that support in there, which is going to make it difficult to be able to do this. Just an observation.
You're correct that we don't have the columns shown here, but this sort of brown trapezoidal shape is inclusive of the column location currently. That's not being proposed to change in that section right there.
Sure.
Because we need to be able to maintain the concrete barrier around the column.
Right, there's whole Cal dot requirements. Yeah.
And so, but it is further down that you can see that we do start to restrict or we start to eliminate that. So we have enough space here at the intersection for the travel lanes that we're proposing to be able to address the traffic congestion. One of the biggest concerns that we hear right now, and this is a little bit difficult to see, but let me see if I can draw this on here, is that there's a very short turn pocket. And so this is be a difficult thing to draw. This is the through lane here, and this is the left turn lane here. And due to the amount of left turn volume, and they only have, from here to store, they tend to back up into the through lane and can block the through lane.
Right.
And so we're not necessarily, we think that the ability to extend actually beyond where the column location needs to be maintained, this area here, will help facilitate that additional travel lane to help extend and remove some of the conflicts with those left turning vehicles blocking the through lanes.
Okay. So a little bit south of your drawing, there's a creek. Does that factor into this quite a bit in terms of your ability to acquire land to build out this intersection?
South of this location?
Yeah, so yeah, you really can't see it on this. Way south, you'll see houses. It's almost like where the Pulte homes went in. And then you've got the overfly for 92. Under it is a creek. It's the creek that feeds the lagoon. And I'm going to take a wild guess that we own and operate it, or it's at least part of San Mateo. Is that something we could acquire and build out some of the infrastructure for this roadway project to get a little bit more elbow room so you can put another lane in?
I think part of the challenge in this area is that there's a pretty substantial amount of Caltrans property here. So between here and perhaps that creek is a property that's owned by Caltrans. It's not just vacant land.
I see.
Not necessarily considered right of way. It's actual Caltrans property.
Got it. Okay. And the Caltrans is pretty unwilling to share?
It's not something that we've approached them about just yet. So, and I don't think that they are as inclined. So as opposed to their right of way where there's a little bit more leeway to make some of the changes, which we're already proposing in the project,
right.
Going into their property is a little bit of a different question.
Okay.
Yeah.
And very last, if we go onto the Fashion Island Bridge, the Seal Slough Bridge, I can see in your drawing the seismic retrofits that were done about 20 something years ago, almost like the cathedral at Notre Dame, the flying buttress construction technique, the exoskeleton. Is that what you're talking about? Perhaps utilizing that to put some sort of a pedestrian roadway on or a pedway?
No, not necessarily. We were looking to see if there was an opportunity to add actual sidewalk onto the existing bridge deck, not necessarily off the side of it. And
So
that's what I was referring to.
Like
What
a
was that?
cantilever.
Yeah, not like a cantilever, on the actual bridge deck, on the existing bridge deck surface that's there.
Okay.
And, potentially seeing if there was an opportunity to dowel in or something like that, the new concrete surface. And that's what I've referenced, that we're not going to be able to do that due to the weight of the concrete. And I think any potential additions to the bridge at this point are going to need to be looked at with higher scrutiny because of those challenges.
Got it. Have you considered a lighter material?
I think we're looking at all options right now.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks for the presentation. It was incredibly informative.
Thank you. All right, I'll remind the commissioners, please wait for me to invite you to start your questions. There was a slight jump in the beginning because you're very energetic and I always appreciate that. I'll also remind the public to please hold on all of your comments because we can hear them from here and it is distracting as we're trying to listen to a highly technical conversation happening. So appreciate your understanding for that. Okay, great. Any other questions at the moment? Okay. Any other questions? All right, I'll start with mine. Thank you so much, Bethany. It's always a pleasure to see you. Really appreciate your time and attention on this issue. I wanted to go to some of the public comment questions and just seek some clarification here. So why isn't sidewalks more universally integrated into this 35% design?
So the scope of the project was primarily to add that sidewalk on the bridge, on the Seal Slough Bridge. The layout that we're doing right now is primarily a horizontal layout. Once we start getting into the 65% design, you start looking at the vertical components of the design and you identify some more of the restrictions in that manner. And so we did lay out the sidewalk on the Seal Slough Bridge, which is part of the scope of the project. But as we're starting to proceed and look more into like I said, the vertical element, looking at more of the structural components of the design, we're identifying some of these additional challenges. And so that's where we're, considering making these proposed changes. I know that there was another section of sidewalk that has been asked about. That one was not included in the scope of the project. And so that's why it hasn't been looked at.
Why wasn't it included in the scope of the project?
I don't think I have an answer for you on that one.
Okay.
We can look into it though.
I think members of the public would appreciate you looking into that. Thanks, Bethany.
I guess through the chair.
Yeah.
Just one thing to note as well is that maybe bringing up one of the funding slides. So far we've secured, I think it was like around $9 million of funding, and we're still looking at trying to secure additional funding to get up to what we currently forecast the project to be estimated to be, which is around that $26 million. We're going to be pursuing Transportation Authority highway funding. So we still, even though it sounds like a large dollar amount, we do have to keep our work modest, and that, that's the work. Sidewalk can get quite expensive, and as we add different design elements in different scope, it increases that dollar amount. So we're working on securing the funding to be able to deliver the project as this 25.5. So we still have quite a shortfall in the amount of the project cost. So we haven't been able to add like additional elements like sidewalk to the project at this point.
Great. Okay, thank you. And I will get to the cost part. Oh, let's transition to that now, in fact. So in terms of the parking spaces, there were 64 parking spaces along this project corridor, of which we're preserving 43 of those spaces with this design, this 35% design. And one of the things that was listed in the reading was that we're choosing a design where there's widening, which I assume is pretty costly, and it's actually noted in the reading that it was pretty costly, but that was mostly to preserve parking. So I was curious, of the $25 million budget, how much is associated with the widening that is in relation to 43 parking spaces?
I don't have the breakdown of that dollar amount at this point, but it's certainly something we can get.
Because I think that on balance with the sidewalk design is where the city council should be weighing in on the policy choices that we're making. And if the city council is saying 43 spaces along this corridor warrants widening, but sidewalks do not, that is at their discretion. They are our elected leaders. But I do think that actually is a very linchpin issue that they should be talking about at their city council meeting. And I hope members of the public bring it up to them at that time as well. Okay, next question I have is around just like we got a lot of public comment around like losing lanes. But I'm really sorry to ask such a basic question so late in the evening, but just to clarify, the lane loss that the members of the public were talking about there was in fact the lane switching, right? Eastbound, westbound. Other than that switch, we are not losing any other traffic lanes with this project design as currently contemplated. Is that correct?
There's one additional turn pocket at the YMCA parking lot that we would be losing. It's about 100 foot of a turn pocket.
100 foot of a turn pocket. Okay, so there's two places where there's a lane loss. Can you talk about the 100-foot lane turn pocket at the YMCA and all the various considerations in that design? And what do you anticipate the results of that lane loss to be?
Yeah, let me see if I can pull this up again. So at this location, this is the location that we're talking about where there's a potential for there to be a lane reduction of the turn lane that's existing. There's an existing left turn lane here. Right now, there's not a lot of turning volume going into that left turn lane, which is one of the reasons why we've considered this. But the primary reason for this is because of these column locations. So again, I apologize that all of the freeway columns are not shown on here, but this particular area tends to be the most constrained due to the freeway columns in the area. And so on this side, we had an ability to widen Yes.
Oh, are you using your laser?
I
Sorry.
was.
Sorry, there it is.
I
There it is.
thought I was. Sorry.
There it is.
Okay. So I was saying that in this area, it's the most constrained area due to the freeway columns. You can see again the freeway coming through in this area. And so there's one in this area, there's one here, and there's a few more, I believe. And because of this, we had to look for these alternative ways to be able to facilitate the bike lanes in this area. So again, this is the reason why the bike lane in this eastbound direction was being proposed to be jumped up onto the sidewalk to help facilitate that, because there wasn't enough room in here to be able to accommodate the bike lane and the travel lane, and then also retain some of the turn lanes in this direction that we were looking for. In this westbound direction, we did not have that opportunity to be able to widen onto the sidewalk. And a lot of this, again, has to do with the property, that property agreement that we were talking about, that this is, in fact, private property, and they have an agreement with Caltrans for the use of this space. And so this was not an option for us in this area. And so that's where we did have to look to reduce the turn lane in this area.
Okay, thank you. And this one for the jumping on to the sidewalk, that sidewalk currently is narrow and it would be widened in order to do that? So you don't lose pedestrian footage?
No.
Okay, thank you. Let's go over to that like $250K of traffic congestion mitigation funding. That was very fascinating to learn about in the public comment. Thank you so much for public commenters for bringing it to our attention. So has there been a consultative process with stakeholders on spending that $250?
I think, no, there has not been. And I don't know if, Matt, you want to provide any feedback on that?
No, I don't think there's been a process. I think it's, when we get these congestion mitigation funds, they go into a pot that's intended to deal with congestion mitigation. So these funds for this one were intended to deal with, as the public has talked about, of dealing with the issues at the Norfolk intersection, is my understanding. And so those are part of the 500,000 of matching funds that we've put towards this. And that was with the intentional purpose of saying that those funds were intended for the congestion relief aspects of that. As Bethany indicated at the beginning, this used to be two projects that got combined into one. And so we had our Norfolk intersection improvements project, and then we had the smart corridor mobility hub, and those got combined into one. And so those funds have been put into this project as part of the matching funds that are going towards the congestion mitigation pieces of this. So those funds are going towards what they were intended for. It's just that the congestion mitigation aspects of this, which, when you add up all the stuff that's being done from a congestion mitigation standpoint out of the $25 million, is probably multiple millions, and Bethany could talk about that. So there are multiple millions of dollars that are going into congestion relief aspects of this project, but it's also lumped in with all the multimodal pieces of that as well. So the money that was collected from the developer is going towards its intended use in terms of addressing congestion at that intersection at Norfolk.
Okay. And then was per a different public comment, was in the online survey or at the last community meeting, was there not a part of that meeting that talked about congestion mitigation, thoughts and feedback specifically? I apologize. I never took the online survey, as you can tell, so I can't answer my own question.
We did talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was brought up. Were there other types of congestion mitigation ideas that came up with a lot of, community interest and excitement that were, considered but rejected for various reasons?
No. As far as at the community meeting?
Or the online survey?
No, not that we've heard.
Okay, so the congestion mitigation tactics that are being deployed, dominantly the signal, the very sophisticated, cool sounding video signal, and the median being extended to stack more cars. Those are the two tactics that I'm hearing in terms of congestion mitigation. And those were ones that the communities strongly supported in the meetings and online.
So there was support. We asked explicitly about the switch of the travel lanes over Seal Slough Bridge. And that's the one that I had shared previously.
Okay, so that's the additional traffic mitigation is the
That's one of
switching.
them.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's components in all of the traffic signals. It's not as isolated as that.
Okay.
As this is the only location that we're doing any of those things. All of the traffic signals that we're making improvements at will have some of these components. And the way that you address congestion on a corridor is by doing improvements along the corridor.
Mhm.
It's not solely at the one location.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, let's talk about money. So we got a, 16, I'm sorry, it's late, you guys. $17 million shortfall right now. Is that right? $16 million shortfall, $16 million shortfall right now, correct? In terms of the funding for this project, where is that 16 million gonna come from?
So we're in the process of applying for the San Mateo Transportation Authority's their call for highways or call for projects for their highway program. And that fund, if we are able to secure that, will provide about 15 million of the 16 million that we're short on the project.
What are the requirements for that kind of a grant?
That we provide multimodal improvements along a corridor that is adjacent to a highway facility.
Okay. And multimodal would be the bike ped and the cars, but not necessarily pedestrians, given this current design?
It's all of it.
But we don't have pedestrians. Because you have sidewalk design along the highway intersections, is that why it would qualify?
We have a number of different pedestrian improvements through the corridor. I don't know okay, sorry. Yeah, we have a lot of pedestrian improvements through the corridor. So all of the protected intersections that are being proposed at multiple intersections, all of those are there to help facilitate some of the pedestrian crossings, including high visibility crosswalks, shortening the crosswalk distances, so like bulb outs, things like that. And then the additional sidewalk that we're proposing, new ramps. There's a lot of facilities that are being proposed to help improve pedestrian access throughout the entire corridor.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, and then the last million is a TBD?
Yes, TBD. We're still looking for the opportunities for that. We are showing it currently as being brought up by city funds, but there are still potential grant opportunities that we're looking at instead of using city funds to see if there's an opportunity to apply for a grant for that.
Okay, great. And then what about the current 8.5 that's secured, which is, by the way, very impressive? Are there any risks of potential federal clawback? Or anything like that, or are they locked in? Because we do have, data that sometimes even contractually obligated funding is not flowing.
We don't have anything to suggest that at this point. That any of the
So we're relying on faith that the federal government will fulfill their contracts, because we don't have the money in our banks like right now. That's what I'm asking basically. Where's the money?
Like, where is it physically right now?
Yeah.
So I can maybe ask the TA to jump on to be able to assist with that question. I believe they're still online. But no, we do not have it.
We don't have it in
we don't have it like in our bank account.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's not typical in the way that these projects would be administered.
Understood.
That funding,
I understand.
Yeah. Well, I think primarily, just to answer that question, it's primarily because we haven't gotten to the construction phase. We wouldn't actually be able to request that funding until we get to the construction phase. We're in design right now. And once we get through the design phase and head into construction, that's this deadline process that we're talking about, that's the time for us to request the construction funding. And so the federal funding that we're talking about is allocated for the construction phase only. And so it's at that time that we can request it.
Yeah, understood. Okay. And so and I have a kind of a set of questions on like stakeholder engagement and process, and then the timelines for these grants. You made references that we have to hit certain benchmarks for the grants, and that's creating the timeline for the stakeholder engagement so far. Could you clarify that a little bit more? Like the federal grant deadline is something, or we have to hit 65% by a certain deadline in terms of the design, or what is the triggering thing or the milestone that we're trying to hit?
There's multiple milestones, unfortunately, that we have to hit to be able to get to the point where we're requesting federal funding and the allocation for that construction funding. So the actual funding deadline that we have right now is currently in 2026, and that's where we're looking to see if we can extend that out a little bit. And so we're looking to see we may have an additional 4 to 6 month buffer in the timeline that we're looking at right now. The aggressive schedule, we may be able to have a few more months on top of what we're looking at this point. But
Just
that
for the design,
entails
or are you talking about for the design?
for the completion of the design, for certification of the right of way, and for getting all of the Caltrans permitting, which takes in itself 6 to 8 months.
Okay. And so what happens if we don't get that?
Then we'll lose the federal funding.
If we don't get that extension?
Right now, sorry. If we are currently working towards the schedule that we have laid out is working towards the existing federal funding deadline that we have. We're still working through the process to see if we can get that additional time.
And sorry, members of the public, thank you so much. So if we get that extension of time, what bonus stakeholder engagement do you anticipate doing?
I think we're still looking at it to try to see if there's anything else that we can include, because we are aware that this is a very abbreviated process.
Okay. And in addition to the 2 community stakeholder meetings and the online survey, what other stakeholder engagement is contemplated between now and the regular deadline, assuming we do not get that extension?
Currently, we have this meeting, we have a city council meeting coming up in September, and then we have another community meeting that's planned, and that's the one that we were talking about potentially pushing out into later this fall.
But right now, even with an extension, no more is contemplated, and without an extension, there are no other stakeholder engagement touch points?
So not necessarily, even though that's where I was just mentioning that we still have to take a look at that. We haven't finished that process.
Okay.
And so I can't speak to that just yet. But under the current timeline and deadlines that we have, this is the schedule that we've laid out for that.
And have you talked to any of the businesses along the corridor?
Not just yet, but that's coming in the next weeks.
Okay, so you are doing other types of stakeholder engagement. So can you talk about those types of maybe more informal stakeholder engagements that you anticipate doing, between now and the official deadline, the current official deadline, that are not like the business thing that you just mentioned in a week?
Yeah, so certainly reaching out to the businesses in the area. We've already had meetings with Samtrans as a stakeholder, the fire department, the police department, to make sure that they're understanding what our designs are looking like and to let us know if they have any concerns about those. So those are the primary stakeholders that we've reached out to otherwise.
Have you talked to that ARCO?
They're included in the business.
In the future business conversation? Yes. Okay, great. And there was another public comment about, yes.
Just to add, we're also going to be meeting with a group of East Side stakeholders on the 25th. So we've got a meeting set up specifically to meet with them and go through the design in more detail and do a deeper dive on that. So a lot of the folks that talked tonight will be at that meeting that we're going to meet with them individually.
Great. It also seems like maybe the bike bus folks into Fiesta Garden / now called College Park might be a good stakeholder group to talk to. Okay. And I lost my train of thought. It's okay. It's okay, Director. Just give me a hot second. Oh, right. So emergency vehicles. In the public comment, one of the public commenters expressed anxiety with the design and whether or not emergency vehicles would be able to get through. Could you speak to that, Bethany?
Yeah, so like I was just mentioning, we did have a conversation with the fire department. They have seen this design. They did not express any concerns about that potential change over the bridge. That said, we do always include with any of our signal designs, if they're not already present, what's called emergency vehicle preemption. And what that does is the fire trucks themselves have an emitter on them, and then the signals have a receiver on them. And what that allows them to do, and the receivers are positioned to be able to accept this from any direction. And what it does is it intakes the fire truck's signal, and it terminates all of the other movements and turns the green light on for that for the direction that the truck is coming from. So if you're ever driving behind a fire truck and you're finding that you're getting really good green lights, that's the reason for it.
Great. Two last questions. I mentioned the 43 spaces being preserved. That was in the reading, down from 64. What are the businesses that, or buildings, not even just businesses, I assume it's also just general, maybe residential buildings. What are the kinds of businesses and residential buildings that are benefiting from those 43 spaces?
The existing or the,
No,
sorry,
the ones that would be
Yeah.
salvaged essentially from this 35% design.
So certainly on the section from Delaware to Grant, there's a lot of multifamily in that area. We do see that section is nearly fully occupied. And so that's one section.
Like high use. What I'm hearing is high use public.
Yes.
Okay.
So that is one section that would be benefiting from it. There's a section that's further west between Pacific and Delaware. We don't necessarily see that that's business related traffic. We suspect that it may be commuter related traffic. There's a Hayward Park Caltrain station that currently charges for parking. And there's really convenient on-street parking right in this area. And so we suspect that there's some on-street commuter use. And again, we do know that there's buses in this area that are using it as a stopover from Samtrans, and that's something, again, that we're hoping to continue to facilitate.
Oh, so the buses would be using some of those 43 parking spot spaces for
layovers,
like storage, essentially.
No, it's not storage. It's essentially for transfers for the bus drivers themselves. So there's actually like a porta potty that's out there for them to be able to,
cool. Okay.
So that kind of thing. So that's in that westerly section where where the parking is going to change as well. And then all the way on the east side, just east of the Seal Slough Bridge, there is some parking that's lost there. I know that there's some additional history in that I don't think I have fully, but I know that there has been in the past some challenges with one of the businesses on the south side there, and I can't remember the name of it, but prior to them building a parking structure, there used to be a lot of heavy usage of the on-street spaces. That's no longer the case since they've built that parking structure. And so the primary use for that parking right now, and I can see if I can bring this up again, I think is for access to the trail is what we anticipate. So there's a trail here along the slough, and there's access to and from it from this area. And so we anticipate that this is largely the primary use of that parking at this point.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you. And just last question, sorry to jump around, but last question on money. So essentially what I'm hearing from your presentation, Bethany, is that we either do a multimodal project in this area, or we just don't do anything at all, given the state of where money is coming from. Some of the public commenters want just traffic mitigation or traffic congestion alleviation and no bike lane whatsoever. But given the type of money available through all these government grants, I'm not hearing that as a feasible option. Is that accurate?
I think the alternative is for the city to self-fund. And for the amount of money that we're putting in this right now, the benefit of what we're getting in terms of all of the multimodal benefits as well as the congestion benefits is the reason why we're suggesting that this is a potential worthwhile pursuit. There is an option for the city to self-fund, but again, this is going to be multiple millions of dollars. And so at the end of the day, we would be putting up multiple millions of dollars. We'd have to find that funding, not grant funding, to be able to address the congestion relief components only, and may not get the other safety benefits, multimodal benefits that we're proposing with the project.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that concludes my questions. Anyone else have any clarifying questions before we move into comments? Okay, great. Who would like to start on last round comments? Great. Commissioner Renaud.
I will be brief. I think for the next round, it's important to clearly define what the word mitigation means and some of the things that fall under that. There was a theme that a lot of people were saying, oh, I understood this presentation better than I did in the community meeting. I take that as you will, but I think it's important to be clear when talking about some of these things, and people don't, even though like the word mitigation might not be something that most people think about or use every day. So just make sure that, because there were a lot of traffic mitigation tactics that a lot of people felt like they didn't exist. So that's one thing. And then also, again, in the next round, make sure that it's highlighted. I would recommend to make sure that it's highlighted some of the changes that are made thanks to some community input from the first round. Again, so that people feel like they've been heard or know that they've been heard. And yeah, looking forward for that next design where there is a little bit more traffic studies and kind of models explaining some of the changes of the switch lanes, because I think that's also concerning to people. And then lastly, with the bike lanes, barring a Canadian solution, extending that northbound bike lane where you talked about extending it to Grant, I think just makes a lot more sense. The more people can stay on the lane and not having to get off the bike is safer. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Great, Commissioner Krantz.
I can find the button. Couple of things. So I think at this juncture, it's important for us, the global us, to manage people's expectations and to echo what you pointed out, that we understand when we use a term or mitigation or what that really means. Because I think we can set people up to be disappointed when they think one thing's going to happen, and because they didn't go to a presentation that was as good as this one was explaining things, that they somehow get this sense that the traffic's going to go away, and it's technically infeasible. It's not going to happen. The traffic is going to be here to stay for a while. So unless we could look, again, I don't want to get long-winded about this. If we could have perhaps more people working from home and not being on the road, bingo. You've taken a huge bite out of this, but I don't think we're going to do that. So we're stuck with it. I had a conversation with Matt a couple of, I guess, months ago now about getting money. And one of the sales pitches from the fish market folks was that we have minimum number of parking spaces because people are going to use their bikes. There's going to be a very bike-friendly building, and nobody over 40 because everybody's going to use a bike. Can we go at, that's not the word I wanted to use. Can we enlist into empathy and contribution to our community money to pay for some of these projects? I would think that the people that are going to move into this 7-story fish market project are going to want to travel down to Trader Joe's and some other places. It would be a huge benefit to them. But like a lot of things, and I don't say this lightly, we like to privatize profit and socialize cost. And this cost gets socialized to us who have not a lot of resources to pay for this. So I would recommend that we look for ways to enlist help from some of the developers that want to build in our little town and get them to help out with this. Because otherwise, raise taxes. I mean, how you going to do this? About the bus layovers, is it possible to move that bus layover spot down to the multimodal site where they would be more comfortable to park their buses? It's a thought. So you don't have to take away that turn lane. Once this, for federal funding dispersal, does the project have to be shovel ready? Is it like ready for the, okay, that's a good point. And then there'll be steps. So we need to, it sounds like, and I do believe the bike is important. I also believe traffic mitigation is important, but I think we could do a better job of setting expectations for that. And I think that's it. I think that's all I've got. Thanks for your time.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair?
Wanted to just end by saying that I support this project, and I think it's could really change cycling in that area, from sort of like this dark, cut through, cramped area to making a really amazing separated bike lane. And I'd recommend to take all the input you've heard about sidewalks and lighting to just really enhance the area as much as possible. And I understand much more after this meeting today, you know, that this is an expensive project, but it's doing a lot, and agreeing with what others are saying, being able to convey that as much to the public. Obviously, you won't ever make anyone happy, but I think you could really make a lot of people realize that it could be a benefit no matter what their mode of transportation is.
Great, thank you. Youth Commissioners Scott and Singh? Sure.
I don't really have like that many comments. Just like I like support this project. I think it's a really good idea, and I really support like adding the lighting. I think that could make like a really big difference. But yeah.
Please, Youth Commissioner Singh.
I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. I think it was really thorough and detailed. I think the 35% concept design, it really improves connectivity and safety for multimodal forms of transportation, but I do think there should be more of a focus on pedestrian forms as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. Echoing everyone's thanks. It's really exciting to see a 35% design presentation. I think this is the first 35% design presentation I've seen in my tenure in the last 4 years. So that was really great. Thank you so much, Bethany, for bringing it to us at this stage, and hope to see other types of these kinds of projects and design in the future as well. I think that, you know, there is a short amount of time here. So I am empathetic to public feedback that, you know, we don't want another like Humboldt bike lane failure. I don't think Humboldt bike lane is a failure, but that's another issue. But I do think the fail was in the communications and the PR on Humboldt bike lane, and also on being able to show our work. And to reiterate and reinforce Commissioner Renaud's comment, like, you know, when I started talking about the stakeholder engagement, you're like, there's no more stakeholder engagement. And then I asked, well, what about all the businesses? Have you talked to them? And you're like, well, we're going to do all that next week. It's like, that is showing your work, right? Like, people need to know how thoughtful you are being, how thoughtful the whole city staff project team is being on this project, and how thorough you are. And I think what happens is that the team is so capable of showing the results, but for this, what people want to know is the work, and where have they been heard, and where have things been adjusted for that feedback. You know, there was thoughts on, you know, we weren't consulted for traffic mitigation, but then in fact you were. So it's like, there's things like that I think are important to reinforce. So because that's how one continues to build trust with residents, rather than just going to just results, right? And going just to the design. So to me, that process part really matters. And thank you so much for unwinding and detailing that during the Q&A. In terms of the merits of the project, I support the project. You know, overall in broad strokes, I remain interested to see how things will be adjusted between 35 and 65%. I think that traffic evaluation is going to pull a lot of weight in terms of informing that, and very curious the evolution accordingly. And so again, that's another communications opportunity for the public in that next community meeting. And will it be ready by City Council too, you said, right? So in whatever you present to City Council to really demonstrate, you know, how all of these pieces of data inform the design and evolve the design. I remain very deeply skeptical of widening the streets for parking. That sounds like a really bad PR move. Like, you know, if you have a $25 million project and you're widening the streets for 43 spaces and not having sidewalk, like, that is just something that I could see written up in a really awful way by some, you know, blogger or news article. Like, that's just not what we need in our city. And that's not true, even in terms of what we're trying to do. The funding is for complete streets, not complete intersections. We need to think about that more concertedly. So I do want to reinforce the feedback of our youth commissioners and vice chair on, you know, thinking about pedestrian pieces. And then in terms of the funding, I realize I didn't ask about, I apologize. When's that grant for that $15 million highway one due?
Middle of September.
Okay, so we'll have final decisions in 2026?
I don't know the exact date. It might be either late this year or early next year.
Okay. So I think it'll be, I hope that the commission can remain engaged, maybe hear an update if we get that grant funding, hear an update at 65 or later in terms of the process. But I hope this becomes something that is regularly brought to the commission and that we can remain a forum for additional public comment, because I think this demonstrated with our wonderful 13 public commenters and the feedback from the commission, things were sifted out and clarified in really helpful ways. So I hope that continues. And with that's my feedback. Anyone else for anything? We good? Okay, thank you so much. All right. So with that, I will now turn to reports and announcements. Are there any other reports and announcements?
Through the chair, I did also want to recognize that I did not call upon Commissioner Robbins due to his absence, and he is excused for today.
Thanks for that clarification. And are there any other reports and announcements? Yes, Commissioner Krantz.
It's an unofficial report. A big thank you to Public Works for the job they did on the Mariners Island Boulevard over 92 roadway repair. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for your hard work. And I realize it's an interim repair, but it hit the bell. It's a 10. Thank you.
Wonderful. And Director?
Yeah, through the chair, a few announcements. One, just looking at our crystal ball in terms of upcoming meetings. So we're looking at for the September 10th meeting that we would have two items, which would include the Rail Corridor Transportation Management Association annual report presentation, as well as presentation from Andrea on the sustainability side that would be on reach codes for the 2025 code cycle. October, Andrea would be back again to talk about leaf blower regulations. And then we would be looking, I believe, at the December 10th meeting to be bringing the Humboldt bike lane alternatives in terms of the work that we've been doing, engaging the community on potential alternatives for a segment of that Humboldt bike lane. So I'm pretty sure that's the solid date that we're looking at. But if it is on that date, because we will be upgrading the city council chambers in terms of we're going to be upgrading the audiovisual equipment as well as the seating and the carpets, that we will be meeting at an alternate location that will be the Oak Room at the San Mateo Downtown Library for that meeting, assuming that we hold to that date. So I wanted to mention those things. A couple other things. One is that we do have a community meeting for the Delaware Safe Routes to School project on August 20, or sorry. We've got so many meetings coming up. We've got our community workshop on the Humboldt bike lanes alternatives on August 25th at the King Center. And so if commissioners are planning on attending, can you please RSVP to Kathleen so that we know if we have any concerns in terms of Brown Act issues with too many commissioners or anything being there. So that would go for any of our community meetings. And if you are planning on going to any of those, it'd be great if you can RSVP or just let Kathleen know that you plan on attending so we can plan accordingly. And then the last thing is I told the clerk that I would announce that there are a certain number of commissioners that still have to take the mandatory ethics training. So if you are one of those commissioners, and Martin from the clerk's office will be reaching out to those that haven't, just make sure that you prioritize getting that done because it is mandatory. So
by December.
No, can Martin send us the email for that again? Because I was searching for it, but I couldn't find it.
We can make sure, he sends that out again.
And we also have the Delaware Safe Routes to School community meeting next Tuesday, the 19th. That's at 7 p.m. at College Park Elementary School, which is the former Fiesta Gardens school. So similar thing as the Humboldt meeting in terms of letting us know.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. I'm losing track of all the meetings. So we will be doing the Delaware Safe Routes to School community meeting on that date, and then we will be going to council with a study session on that on September 2nd. We will be bringing this item on the Fashion Island Boulevard 19th Avenue project that we just talked about. That will be going to council on September 15th. And then Monday night is train horn noise for those that are interested in that topic. So this coming Monday. So
Will commissioners be included in the emails broadcast for all these meetings?
I will talk to staff because I was thinking about that today, that I'm afraid that we may have neglected to send out notices to the commissioner. So I'll make sure that we work on getting that done so that you are all aware of these meetings. So we'll
Be really helpful. Thanks.
Do you guys also get the e-news updates? Because we usually also post there as well. So that's a good one. But yeah, we can make a note of the SNI Commission email inbox.
Great.
This would be a good chance to mention the commissioners' dinner that is coming up too. I think September 4th, yeah.
September 4th, yeah. So the Commissioner Appreciation Dinner will be on September 4th. I believe that is at the
That is at the senior center.
at the Senior Center. Yeah. So looking forward to that event as well, where you all get to be recognized for your contributions, for being members of the commission, and be recognized for all of your efforts.
And then next commission meeting, we switch.
Yes, we'll be doing the
rotate.
chair and vice chair rotation at the September meeting. So that is on the plan for the agenda for that evening. So.
Fabulous. Any other reports and announcements? It has been my honor serving as chair this last year. Thank you so much to my fellow commissioners. And of course, huge thank you to staff for an amazing tenure with lots of special meetings. Really appreciate all the time and energy. So thanks so much. And with that, we'll close it out.